It appears that we are live. And so, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 2021 February 23rd Oregon Tourism Commission meeting. To everyone that has joined us through this through this webinar or through Travel Oregon's industry YouTube channel, it appears that we are live. And so, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 2021 February 23rd Oregon Tour. I've been told I enjoy the sound of my voice too much. We have evidence. All right. So again, to those of you who have joined us through the Travel Oregon Industry YouTube channel, thank you for taking the time to be with us today. Today's meeting materials, including the agenda and supplemental material, can be found on the Travel Oregon Industry website if you'd like to follow along. One feature we're utilizing during today's meeting is closed captioning and transcription services. We feel this is an important step in supporting both the statewide and Travel Oregon's diversity, equity, and inclusion policies. If you are joining us today via Zoom, you may turn on these features or turn them off using the button located on your Zoom taskbar near the bottom of the screen. As our meeting today is being convened virtually, I would like to go around and ask each commissioner to introduce themselves, maybe beginning with Vice Chair Francisco.
Good morning, my name is Nigel Francisco. I am the CEO of Ninkasi Brewing Company in the Willamette Valley, Eugene, Oregon.
Next volunteer.
Good morning, I'm Don Anway with Newman Hotel Group in Ashland, Oregon.
I'll go next. Go ahead.
Good morning, everybody. Maria Ponzi, Ponzi Vineyards in Sherwood, Oregon. Good morning.
And Richard Boyles, President of Merite Hotel Management, as well as Sycan B Corp, hotel and other property development company.
Go ahead, Mia.
Hey, Mia Shepherd, owner of Juniper River Adventures and Little Creek Outfitters in Maupin, Oregon.
Good morning, everybody. This is Kenji Sugihara from Salem, Oregon. I am Chief Pilot for ACAM Aerials, and I'm in the film and television industry.
And good morning, I'm Scott Youngblood, Chair of the Commission and General Manager at the Embassy Suites by Hilton Hotel at Washington Square up in Portland. Unfortunately, Commissioner DeNovo is unable to be with us today. Her thoughtful input will be missed. So, Commissioners, a conversation arose during our last Commission meeting with regard to the appropriate timing of Travel Oregon's outreach and marketing to promote visitation to the state. In response to this conversation, Todd and Sarah Morrissey coordinated a meeting with the governor's office and were joined by Commissioner Boyles, Anway, Francisco, and myself for time with our state policy advisor and the governor's deputy chief of staff. The meeting was highly productive, and we emphasized the critical balancing act of public health and safety needs with the economic challenges facing businesses and communities statewide. I'd like to invite the commissioners who attended, if you'd care to reflect on our time with the governor's team.
Scott, I'll jump in. I was very appreciative that the governor's office took the time to have that meeting. Obviously, travel tourism is an important part of our overall economy in Oregon. And so are some of the ancillary businesses that travel and tourism support, like the brewing industry that I'm involved in. And they are very receptive and understanding about the situation that many of our companies are in. So I appreciate that time. And, you know, it is going to be a balance over the years, but hopefully, you know, at least my takeaway thoughts from that conversation was they're receptive to keep the conversation going and keep us apprised of sort of future steps and when it's appropriate to plug back in with them.
Nice. Thank you, Nigel.
I would add that I was very interested in learning about the metrics that the governor's office would use in evaluating when Travel Oregon could begin doing some messaging again, recognizing that our most likely target audience is initially geared towards Oregon or Oregonians for travel in Oregon, and recognizing that broader messages might only come at some later point when the incidence of COVID is still significantly reduced from where it is currently. And frankly, we pressed the governor's representative a bit to learn what the metrics might be and what they might be thinking in terms of timing. I think that the governor's office will wait until the incidence of COVID is pretty insignificant before the organization, Travel Oregon, is really in a position to do much messaging going forward.
Thank you, Richard. Don, anything to add?
Yeah, I support everything that Nigel and Richard has already communicated. The one thing that, it was nice to see that they're open for future meetings too, so that we can continue our dialogue. And so I thought that was very important to, that we'll be able to, connect with them again in the near future.
Agreed. Thank you all for sharing your thoughts. And for my part, I'm grateful to serve an administration that understands and appreciates the immense contributions that tourism brings to our statewide and local economies, and I guess of equal import, the thoughtful and responsible stewardship that we offer our communities, our environment, and the industry. So thank you. We have a very full agenda today. Thank you all for your willingness to start at 8:30 this morning. There's a lot to get through. And so, commissioners, I'd like to acknowledge that in holding a live stream meeting today, we meet all public meeting notice requirements as required by state law. On February 8th, that was a Monday, the commission meeting notice was posted to the commission meetings webpage and announced in the industry e-news. This included the agenda, a public comment form and instructions, and a link to this live stream. The sole comment that was submitted has been shared with the commission and will be posted to the industry side and become part of the public record for today's meeting. And I'd like to switch to commission business and discuss the packet that was distributed. I want to confirm that everyone has received and had a chance to review their commission packet and materials, including the financial reports.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes.
Good. Thank you, Mia. And I'd also like to thank Commissioners Francisco and Boyles for reviewing the financials with myself and Todd and Jeff and Kathleen prior to this meeting. Nigel, would you like to provide the commission with an update of our financial review?
Yes, thank you, Chair Youngblood. We did meet and reviewed the financials. The current financials year to date were reviewed. The February deposit was $3.5 million, bringing Travel Oregon to 98.6% of the adopted 19-20-21 budget. Todd will be speaking to this further during our upcoming revenue forecast. Overall, we were extremely pleased with the recovery and are seeing the team's diligent efforts in tracking the progress, and we have no concerns at this point.
Brilliant. Thank you, Nigel. Commissioners, have you all had the opportunity to review the December 15th meeting minutes? And are there any questions or comments regarding those? Misspellings, typos, anything? All right. Well, if not, I will take a motion for approval of the meeting minutes.
I move to approve.
And may I have a second?
Second.
There it is. All in favor, please say aye.
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 And any opposition? Perfect. Then the December 15th commission meeting minutes are approved and will be posted to the commission section of the Travel Oregon Industry website. Commissioners, a nominating committee is appointed annually to engage with one another and submit recommendations as to who should serve as the commission's next chair and vice chair. And with your approval, I'd like to appoint Vice Chair Francisco and Commissioner Sugahara to serve as the nominating committee and return with recommendations at the June commission meeting. Is there any discussion or questions concerning the nominating committee or process? All righty. Thank you. Well, then let's talk about our revenue forecast. We now have the opportunity to hear from Todd and our partners at Tourism Economics to provide us with a revenue forecast for the coming 21-23 biennium. Todd, are you with us?
As soon as I am unmuted, I am with you. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Just for the record, and for those that are tuning into either the live stream on YouTube or joining us here on Zoom, I am Todd Davidson, and I have the privilege and pleasure of serving as the CEO at Travel Oregon. We have obviously significant business before us, and I appreciate Chair Youngblood acknowledging that we have a very full agenda this morning, and appreciate the commissioner's willingness to begin our meeting a half an hour early, and also your diligence in reviewing the strategic plan progress report and other materials that were provided to you in advance to help facilitate a healthy and hearty conversation this morning as we move forward. It is my pleasure at this point to begin the review of our revenue forecast, both for this current fiscal year, the end of the 2019-21 biennium, as well as for this future biennium that is coming up, 2021-23. And allow me just a point of I guess I'll call it an executive point of order at this, just to acknowledge that Commissioner Greg Willits has been able to join us here this morning. Greg, it's good to see you this morning. Thanks for being able to join us here. So at this point, commissioners, I would like to turn the introduction of our colleagues with Tourism Economics over to LaDan, who is our research manager here at Travel Oregon, overseeing, as you know, the breadth of a body of work on behalf of the travel and tourism industry here in Oregon, and the great work that we're doing at Travel Oregon in the research area. So LaDan, I will turn it over to you to introduce Jeff.
Thank you, Todd, and good morning, members of the commission. It's always really good to see your faces and all the beautiful smiles you always have on your face. Yeah, so I'm very pleased to invite Jeff Locker to share the Oregon lodging tax revenue forecast with us today. Jeff has very great wealth of knowledge in the tourism and economic impact analysis. He's a senior economist at Tourism Economics, where he works to bring clarity to complex issues facing DMOs and the tourism industry in general. Jeff performs DMO budget analysis, revenue forecasts, cost-benefit analysis, and other custom research projects. So prior to joining Tourism Economics, he was a professor at Arizona State University, where he also focused on economic impact studies and also consumer preferences in the tourism industry. He received his PhD from Clemson University. Go Tigers. We really appreciate all the good work Jeff and Tourism Economics are doing to inform us, including this revenue forecast that we'll be seeing. As you will see, the study is really directly linked to the economic and demographic outlook for Oregon and the US in general. So without further ado, I hand it over to Jeff. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, Dan, and hello to the commission. First off, am I sounding okay? Great. All right, so what we'll have for you today is the new and updated revenue forecast for Oregon. And then we're also just going to kind of take an overview of what's going on in the U.S. economy and the tourism sector in particular, just to try to give you a sense of, all the things we're looking at when we create this forecast and where we think the economy and the tourism sector in general are headed across the U.S. Yeah, so as I said, brief look at your lodging tax history, look at the recovery out of this pandemic, general forecast, and then your guys' specific revenue forecast. So, looking historically at your revenue forecast, two things stand out. One is the big spike in revenue that occurred when the TLT Oh, I'm not screen sharing. That'd be a good idea. Are we there now? Perfect. So the two things that stand out are the big spike after the TLT was increased, and then also you do see a strong seasonality with the summer months producing a lot more revenue than the winter months. So to take a look at 1 year, here's your STR hotel revenue for 2019. And we do see that major spike in June through. You are a more seasonal market than most of the U.S. A higher percent of your revenue does occur in the summer than the nation as a whole. And this is particularly important this year because we really are, as a country and as a tourism sector, in a race to save the summer season. The vaccines are getting distributed pretty quickly, and we do have pretty high optimism that it will be very close, if not at herd immunity for the late summer. And we expect those to be pretty strong for the leisure travel sector. So again, just something to keep an eye on is the race of vaccine distribution versus that upcoming summer season. We want to make sure July and August are as strong a month as possible, given the high share of revenue they contribute over the course of a year. Switching back historically again, we've mapped out here both your actual revenue in dark blue and your adjusted, which assumes a constant rate or a TLT rate, and see this nice steady increase in both those bars until 2020, when with your fiscal year or how you collect revenue, the final month was March, which was the first month that was impacted by COVID. So you were on track for an increase in fiscal year 2020, but ultimately March hit and you fell 3% to $40.3 million. What we're looking at in terms of the U.S. economy and the tourism sector in general. I think one thing I always try to emphasize in these talks is that the unemployment rate maybe paints too sunny of a picture of what's going on. I think we're at about 6.5% unemployment rate, where we started at 13.5 at the low end. So, it seems like we're getting pretty close to full employment. One of the big negatives there is that the labor participation rate has dropped significantly. So there's just not as many people. A lot of people took early retirement, so they have health issues, so they dropped out of the labor force. So actual number of jobs is trailing well behind the unemployment rate in terms of return to normalcy. And what's worse is that the employment is starting to plateau. So, we see through May through October, we were adding at least 500,000 jobs a year. On November, that was down to 250,000. December, we actually fell backwards 250,000 jobs before just a slight increase in January. So, the increase in COVID cases, the deteriorating health of the nation has really impacted employment these last few months. We do expect this to start turning the other way very soon here. But again, we don't expect to be back to 19 levels before 2022 at the earliest, 2023 more likely we get back to the pre-COVID total employment. At the same time, that's not bad compared to the last recession. Again, we do see a lot of these jobs coming back quickly. The most of the losses are in the leisure hospitality sector. So things like restaurants, once again the vaccine is distributed, the health of the nation is back to normal, we think those jobs are going to return quite quickly compared to prior recessions. At the same time, we've been permanently knocked off our pre-COVID growth path. So expect a really quick surge in the summer as that vaccine gets distributed. The positive for the travel industry is where so much of their money comes from. Wealthy households disproportionately spend on lodging. So the stat we have here is that households making more than $100,000 account for 24% of all households, but 59% of all leisure spending. Why that's good news is that, as is the case with most recessions, the high-income households are the least impacted in terms of losing jobs. That's especially true for this recession, with most of the job losses coming in lower-paying jobs. And then you add on to the fact that the equity markets have held up really well. So everyone's stock portfolio is still hanging in there. So they have money, and once they feel safe, they're going to travel and they're going to spend a lot. So the way this has impacted households, has really positive implications for the lodging industry. Again, everything's about vaccinations. When can we get close to herd immunity? When people feel safe, they'll start traveling again in really large numbers. So our current estimation is that by June, we'll have about 60% of the population vaccinated. And when you add that into the people that have already had COVID and have some built-in immunities, we should be pretty close to, if not at, herd immunity by June. How we see all this impacting the tourism sector recovery. So, the initial recovery, which we think is leisure and drive, has already started. And we're seeing numbers go up. Whether it's STR room revenue, whether it's air passengers, car trips. We're seeing all those numbers steadily increase. So we are seeing some good recovery from the leisure drive market. Next up will be small and medium sized groups, sports tournaments, stuff like that. And then we'll start to see regional international travel. So that'll be for us, Canadians, Mexicans crossing the border. We think that'll be in the second half of 2021 before we start to see a serious increase in those types of numbers. And then finally, next year, 2022, we'll get those large international events coming back online, as well as long-haul international travel from Asia and Europe. So zooming in on 2021, we're already in Q1. We still see it's pretty horrific out there. With the health situation having deteriorated, even though it's starting to turn around now. Tough part. But as we go into the second and third quarters, the vaccinations are going to really start to make a meaningful impact. I know my parents just got their second shot, and they can't wait to go and live life again. And we will see, as we get towards herd immunity, leisure travel will really pick up. Then once we get to the fourth quarter, we should have herd immunity by then. Business travel and big group events will start to be, we call it recession normal, so normal bad as opposed to horrific. We think there'll be a pretty quick leap up there, still down 20-30%, but by the end of this year, things will start to be recession bad as opposed to horrific. just to look at things, some of these I mentioned, everything's trending up, although, it has plateaued with the deteriorating health situation recently. And then we do see, things like auto trips are performing much better than air passenger trips. So again, people are staying local. And then, this kind of pattern of, you see the highest demand is for car trips, then a step down to hotel room demand or revenue, and then another step down to taking a flight. So that's been consistent throughout this pandemic, and we'll expect it through at least the first half of this year to continue. In general, who's doing well? Rural markets are doing well. Cities are doing the worst. We look at the 10 best performing markets there. On the left, we see Mississippi, Idaho, South Dakota, Montana, etc. Those are the places doing the best. If we look at Oregon in particular, you're going to see the same thing. Portland doing the worst, the rural areas doing better. And then economy units tending to do the best. So the luxury hotels really suffering again. That has to do with a lot of group and business travelers as much as anything, that they've really lost those markets. The best performing types of hotels are interstate hotels that are just picking up general travel across the country. As an aside, you guys rank pretty close to the middle of the states. As a state, you're doing slightly better than the US in terms of room revenue for the year, and pretty close to the median in terms of states. So you're right there in the middle if we put all 50 states on a chart like this. And final news, just to give a bit of hope and optimism, is Longwoods and Miles have done this survey throughout the pandemic of who thinks they're traveling in the next 6 months, and just the last results, we had this huge uptick, and part of that is due to the 6 months now covering the 4th of July and a good chunk of the summer, but also we think there is a lot more optimism that people are going to be vaccinated and the health situation is going to be back to normal by the summer. So people are planning their trips. They're ready to go as soon as they feel safe, or they have that vaccine and are safe. So there is again some real positives for the next 6 months or so. In general, how we see the travel sector reacting to this, 2020 was obviously the worst year ever seen. 2021, in terms of percent increase, is going to be the best year we've ever had. We see room demand up 26%, room revenue up 32%, still well below 2019 levels, but a huge gain. We think room demand will hit 2019 levels in 2023. Room revenue will return to normal in 2024. So, we are going to see a big increase this year, but there's still a lot of ways to go to get back to par on these metrics. As again has been the theme, leisure is going to lead the way. You see in 2020, leisure travel only down around 24% versus a 60% loss in business travel. We think leisure travel domestically is going to be back to normal in 22 versus maybe 2024, 25 for business travel. So this works well for you guys. You have a pretty strong or a pretty high share of leisure travelers. So again, you have a good market mix for this type of environment. Zooming in and looking at this quarterly now at room demand, things I've kind of mentioned is that once we see that vaccine get widely distributed, we think there's going to be a pretty massive jump. So we see the second half, you going from down 40%, down 30% to down 15-ish% in the second half of the year. So again, that vaccine is really the key to going to getting close to normal. Now zooming in particularly on Oregon and your revenue forecast. As I said, you are doing slightly better than the United States. That's you in the orange versus the US in the light blue, Idaho and New York in the dark blue and red as examples of really strongly performing and weakly performing states. So, so far you've done well. And, I think a lot of that has to do with your market mix of, a high leisure segment. So what we did here, we created 3 scenarios of what we think is going to be happening in the future. We're going to give you a full version of the presentation that has this all laid out. But basically the baseline is our best guess. The upside is the vaccine progressing a bit faster, the economy doing a bit better than we expect, and then the downside is the reverse of that. In terms of what's going into your specific forecast, again, we think you do have that favorable market mix with a high leisure share, a high drive share, a high transient, high domestic, a lot of real positives for you that have impacted you throughout the pandemic and will continue to be well going forward. Adding to that, you got the natural attractions that are great for social distancing. And, we think the West Coast is going to they're economically seems bad now, but they're going to recover pretty quickly and do well in the medium and long term. Yeah, so here's a look at those 3 forecasts. I think the one thing to note is that our upside is closer to the baseline than the downside. We still think there's a lot more downside risk in this environment. Again, mainly would be some sort of real economic setback. The equity markets have held up really strong. Could something happen there to, as we're recovering from the health section, could we dip down in the economic portion as well? So there is a bigger gap to the downside than the upside. Again, you guys already know this, but by far the worst crisis we've ever had. I mapped our 3 scenarios compared to U.S. revenue in 08 and 01, and the depth is different, and the link to recovery is just different than those 2 prior recessions. And here's kind of the final numbers. So these do have factored in the drop in the TLT rate from 1.8 to 1.5 that occurred. So we have you at about 21 million in fiscal year 21, about half of your 2019 revenue, and then recovering to around 70% of the prior of the regular revenue in 2022 and 80% in 2023. The big difference between the previous forecast and this is fiscal year 2021. Our 2022 and 2023 numbers are pretty similar, but you had a big outperformance in 2021 from our prior forecast. Essentially, what happened there was we made the forecast in, I think, June, right as the second wave was cresting, and we figured that was going to really hamper summer travel. And then right after we made the forecast, the second wave went right back down, and we had a much stronger summer season than we'd expected at that time. So I think we improved from about 17 million to 21 million, largely based on a big outperformance in the summer months. Just again, full details available here. Not really worth going over in presentation form, but just to let you know, we have a quarter by quarter estimate available as well. And just a few key thoughts before I wrap up. Positive wise, remember that room demand and visitor spending is going to be growing faster than room revenue. So there are more positives to take away there. And we think that your non-hotel sectors or stakeholders have a lot to look forward to. We talked about the domestic market mix is encouraging the high leisure drive transients, all great for you guys. Longer term, your international mix is pretty encouraging. You have a good exposure to the Canadian market, which should recover quickly. Also, the fast-growing Asian economies, particularly China, should rebound quickly. So, we think you'll outperform the U.S. in attracting internationals in the medium and long-term future. And finally, as we say, the things are looking good on the economic front. The vaccinations are proceeding really briskly, and as those proceeds, jobs are going to turn up too. And as we get to herd immunity, we expect a really sharp uptick as a lot of laid off people in the leisure hospitality sector get picked back up for regular business. So expect a really strong economic recovery in 2021 as well. And with that, I'll take any questions you have. Kenji.
Yep.
All right. Thanks for an excellent presentation. That was very thorough. Now, the question that I had was for the 2022 and the 2023 numbers. On the upside, was there any calculations made in terms of what impact the track and field world championships would have, or is that so nebulous at this point in terms of when that's actually going to be scheduled or coming back, that you didn't include in either of those numbers?
No, that we're not making judgments on specific events and when and where they might take place.
Okay. So they weren't included in any of those upside numbers?
Correct.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Jeff, on your year-over-year travel slide, it was in the next 6 months that 81% of the population had an intent to travel. What does that look like from a year-over-year comparison if you're looking at same period sort of last year? I think it said 87, but it's not, I guess, the exact same period.
Yeah, so I mean that 87, that's actually that's about when this whole thing started. So that's probably even down from normal. So yeah, I would imagine, I don't have a year-to-year comp, but I'd imagine it'd be in the 90s on a normal year.
Okay, thanks. So we're not quite back to normal then, but getting close, it sounds like.
Right.
Jeff, Maria Ponzi, I just wanted to make sure I was reading that correctly, the one slide that was talking about where we might be in, I think 2024, is that sort of where you're forecasting we might be able to hit where we were in 2019? Is the last one? That I just want to make sure I was reading that. So we won't really hit our revenue until 2024 to meet up.
So when we look at TLT, it's gonna be even longer, because remember we had that decrease in the TLT rate from 1.8 to 1.5. So yeah, I don't even on my timeline have you returning to fiscal year 19 revenues with that decrease.
Okay.
Room revenue, I don't think I have it, because I only forecasted through the fiscal year. But
so it's well beyond that.
You'd be looking at 2023 or 2024 to return to normal room revenue.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
A quick question on the slide showcasing New York, US, Idaho, and Oregon. Was Idaho chosen because it's a top performing destination, or just because it's closely aligned with Oregon tourism?
Both. Yeah, I think if we look at the other slide, they were one of the top. Actually, they're the second best. And I decided to go with Idaho rather than Mississippi as a neighbor comp. But yeah, so they're the number 2 market in the U.S. in terms of post-pandemic performance.
Thank you.
So Jeff, I have one more question. Do you anticipate differing sort of recovery rates on our international travel side between Asia and Europe, because the impact it had has been a little bit more disparate?
Yeah, the big question here is China, and it's kind of an internal discussion we have. They did really recover quite slowly after the SARS outbreak, and that was 2003. Their numbers were depressed for a little while, But then the question is, how meaningful is that now? Even 15 years ago, their economy has changed so much. And that SARS was obviously isolated in a few countries versus this is global in a way that SARS wasn't. My thought is that they're going to recover quite quickly, given their economy is one of the least affected economies in the world. They're one of the few countries that's going to have a GDP growth in 2020, and they're going to get back to their normal 5% growth rates really soon here. Combined with, we're not there yet, but there's the potential that the political climate gets a little friendlier over the next few years. And that's been a real anchor. They arrivals from China actually fell during the Trump administration, which didn't happen off the top of my head, didn't happen in any other major markets. And so I think there is maybe some latent demand that could pick up from China. We could have some strong growth there. And then in general, emerging countries, India, South Korea, places like that are growing fast, and their economies are going to grow fast in their outbound markets compared to slow growing Europe. We especially see some trouble between Brexit and them struggling with COVID. They could be a really slow recovery market.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, especially the UK is a big market for us. How about the Canadians? Because they're one of our biggest the biggest international.
Yeah, I mean, we think again that drive will be really quickly to return. So that bodes well for Canadians. The difficulty there is that Canada is well behind in vaccine distribution right now. And we'll see if that catches up in the near future, or if that kind of gap remains. They're way slower than the U.S. They're a little bit slower than most of Europe. So can that pick up, especially by the summer? And can we get some sort of political agreement between Canada and the U.S. in terms of some sort of COVID passport that lets people travel without doing quarantines or being isolated? So yeah, a couple things to take care of there before we see the uptick. But we do see Canada and Mexico recovering faster than the long haul markets.
Thank you.
Hi, Jeff. This is Mia. Thank you for the presentation. A quick question. I'm just wondering if this data also includes maybe why rural areas are performing better, and also even why Midwest states like Idaho are performing better than Oregon. And noticed on that list, Wyoming, Montana, I think we're South Dakota, all those Midwest states are performing better than Oregon.
Yeah, it's basically a worldwide trend that the more urban you are, the worse you're doing. And the essential problem is that if you go to a big city, there's not a lot of places to social distance. Plus, a lot of the attractions are closed, so there's just not as much to do in the urban areas. So going to see a show, going to a museum, going to have the nightlife, that's just stuff that's out the window for most consumers right now. So people instead are trying to find places where they can get out in space and stay away from people during their vacation. We also see the kind of like the condo and the short-term rental market is doing better than the hotel market. Again, just a bit more space for your family there.
Any other questions for Jeff at this time? All right, seeing none. Jeff, thanks so much. Appreciate you making time, and as always, grateful for the tremendous work that you and the team at Tourism Economics put into developing these revenue forecasts for us. We've had the pleasure of working alongside Tourism Economics now for a few biennia in doing these revenue forecasts. And your very thoughtful approach and your very conservative approach is very much appreciated by me and the members of the commission. So appreciate your great work, my friend, and thank you for joining us today.
Great to be here. I wish I could come out there again.
It won't be too long. It won't be too long. We'll see you out here soon. Thank you, Jeff. Commissioners, now that Jeff has walked us through the perspective of tourism economics on a revenue forecast, both for this fiscal year as well as for the 21-23 biennium, I will now present to you a proposed budget modification for the remainder of this fiscal year, and also ask you for your concurrence on a revenue forecast for the 2021-23 biennium. This is to provide the staff with a planning framework. Again, this revenue forecast for the 2021-23 biennium is by no means the final revenue forecast. Instead, what it is shall we call it kind of a meeting of the minds of you as the commission and the staff and the team of tourism economics to say these seem reasonable for a planning framework to move forward with. And then we as your staff team will develop a strategic plan and proposed budget to bring back to you later this spring for your consideration and adoption then at our June commission meeting. When we meet in June, we will then bring a final revenue forecast, and it may be revised, obviously, from what we're looking at now. That things may change as we have noted in our conversation with Jeff here today. So that will all happen at the June meeting. So the adoption of a revenue forecast today is really around a planning dimension for the staff to take back to develop a strategic plan against. The budget modification is specific action that we'll be asking the commission to take as well today also. And it's based on the revised revenue forecast for this current fiscal year that we're currently in. As I begin my presentation, I do want to make one very important point. The work that Jeff did in pulling together their revenue forecast for this fiscal year and for the next biennium was obviously heavily weighted towards looking at the lodging sector. That's as it should be, because as an agency, we are funded through a statewide transient lodging tax. But I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge and what we all know to be true, but bears being repeated, and that is the entirety of Oregon's travel and tourism industry has been impacted by COVID-19. While we saw numbers that spoke to the impacts on the lodging sector specifically, we know that restaurants, retail, outfitters and guides, live event entertainment venues, and a host of other businesses that make up Oregon's travel and tourism experience have been severely impacted by COVID-19. So I think it's just important to acknowledge that as we begin consideration of our revenue forecast and our budget modification as we move forward. The impacts of COVID-19 have disproportionately impacted regions of the state and sectors of Oregon's tourism industry differently. And the budget modification that I am going to share with you now takes very specific steps to address these. So let me walk you through that proposed budget modification now. What you're seeing on this slide is at the top of the page are the revenue forecasts that the commission adopted at their June meeting. These are the ones that Jeff referred to in his presentation as the revenue forecast adopted as we were starting to see a surge in COVID cases again. At that time, we revised our revenue forecast for this current fiscal year to $16 million. That was the baseline forecast that Tourism Economics had brought forward. Keeping that in mind and acknowledging what Jeff has shared with us this morning, the proposed revenue forecast that we want to bring forward to the commission today is that in the 21-22 fiscal year, we will receive $29.1 million in transient lodging tax revenue, and the 2022-23 fiscal year, we will receive $32,500,000 for a total of $61,600,000. This is the baseline forecast that Tourism Economics and Jeff just presented to us a few minutes ago. I will tell you that these numbers have been reviewed by LaDan and also by Kathleen in our operations department and serving as our comptroller. They both had run some scenarios and looked at various research, as had I. And the three of us concur that the baseline revenue forecast for the 21-23 biennium as presented by Tourism Economics are reasonable and conservative, and we think worthy of being adopted at this time as a revenue forecast for the upcoming biennium for us to be able to plan against. So these are the numbers specifically that I will ask the commission to concur that we adopt as a planning revenue forecast for the 2021-23 biennium. Now, moving on to talk about the budget modification specifically. Again, at the top of the page, you see all sources of revenue. The $39 million for 2019-20, that was the adopted budget. The 2021 revised budget to $16 million, the one that was adopted last June. We had other sources anticipated at $400,000, and we also took action to transfer $910,000 from our operating reserve. What we are proposing as a budget modification is that we realize the 2019-2020 actual transient lodging tax revenue was $39,714,125, and that the proposed 2020-2021 revenue forecast be modified from 16 million to 20 million. Now, this is slightly below the downside forecast that Tourism Economics had brought forward. I still believe that the work that Tourism Economics has done is reasonable. I heard Jeff loud and clear when he said that he thinks the downside risks are still greater as we go forward. That's why the gap between the downside and the base side was larger than between the upside and the baseline. So I believe at this time a $20 million revenue forecast is reasonable. The one other reason is we still have 1/3 of this fiscal year's revenue to come in. Yes, we're at 98.6% of revenue, which fundamentally means that the revenue that comes in March, April, May, and June all puts us further and further into the black. We have yet to see, though, how that revenue is going to come in. And we have the opportunity to convene a special commission meeting to do an additional revenue forecast revision during the spring, if we so choose to do so. The other sources we're proposing to decrease from 400,000 to 210,000 because there will not be the registration fees. Specifically, the biggest part of this is registration fees for the governor's conference. We are proposing having a governor's conference, but the registration fees will not be there. We're proposing to increase the transfer from the operating reserve. Again, we've already transferred $910,000. We'd like to increase that by $93,000 to a little over $1 million. We'll still have over $2.1 million in our reserve for future consideration. And then we'll transfer $106,300 from other program fund balances. This is money that's available in the operations budget currently from a prior period, and it's made available because we changed our accounting method for managing our prepaids, and that freed up $106,300 that we would obviously like to put to work. Next slide, please. I think what's important to keep in mind as we look at the budget modification is what we're hearing from our industry partners as well. And we went out and did a stakeholder survey in the fall of 2020, and we asked what the short-term priorities would be for recovery. When you're looking at Travel Oregon programs, what would you want to see emphasized over the course of the next 6 to 12 months in terms of recovery from COVID-19, the wildfires, and related economic conditions? Number one and number two across the board were grants and funding resources and the development of COVID-friendly visitor experiences. You will see that, next slide, please. You will see that trend continue, those being the top two. When you look at the type of business, the type of entity that participated in the survey, and again, across the board, whether it was from a for-profit business, nonprofit organizations, or government entities, number one and number two were grants and funding sources and COVID-friendly visitor experience development. Next slide, please. And finally, when you look at it by region, you see that many of the regions rated grants and funding resources as number one, and those that didn't rank it number one ranked it number two. Next slide, please. And as it relates to COVID-friendly visitor experience development, you see it flip. Those that had grants and funding as number one still had COVID-friendly visitor experience development as number two, and vice versa. So again, across the board, across each region, across the various entity types, focusing on grants and funding sources, looking at COVID-friendly visitor experience development during this pause is important to our industry partners. Next slide, please. So what we are proposing with this budget modification is this. With that change in increasing the transient lodging tax revenue forecast from 16 million to 20 million, we are statutorily obligated to put 20% of that money into the RCTP program that would be encumbered for future use, and 10% of that money is statutorily obligated to our competitive grants program. So that's the 1.2 million that you see at the top there, listing out the regional program and the grants program. You're going to hear later today about a really wonderful, innovative program that has been developed by our destination development team in collaboration with many others at Travel Oregon, but under the leadership of our destination development team called Destination Ready. It is specifically focused on helping develop those COVID-19 friendly visitor experiences across the state. What can we be doing now to make sure we're ready for welcoming visitors back to Oregon? And so they've gone out and done an outreach program, an application process for folks to submit proposals for their programs. Again, I won't go into the details of the program because there'll be a presentation later, but suffice to say, the demand for the program outstripped the resources that were available. And we see an opportunity here to increase resources going into that program. So we would like to see $200,000 go into the Destination Ready program to be able to fund more of those projects. And then specifically within our Global Strategic Partnerships department, we want to put $1.5 million into our Regional Recovery and Stability Fund. These are resources that would be provided to the RDMOs, with roughly a third of that money going out to equally divided amongst the 7 regions, and two-thirds of that money going out to the regions weighted on the basis of the impacts that they have experienced as a result of COVID-19, as we're able to track through impacts in the statewide lodging tax revenue on a regional basis. What's important to note here is that because these funds are going into a Regional Recovery and Stability Fund, the uses can be different than they are for the RCTP program. These are not RCTP funds. This is over and above those funds for the RCTP, and there are statutory limitations on how RCTP funds can be used by the RDMOs. So we envision having some guardrails that we'll be developing on behalf of Travel Oregon to use with the regional DMOs, but can foresee these funds being used for in-state marketing. We can we envision these funds being used for regional grant programs. We envision these funds being able to be used for their own immediate opportunity funds, all programs that they already may have in place, but they're able to use those funds in that way. Furthermore, we would see these funds being available over the course of the biennium. So if they choose not to use all of their share in year 1, they're able to use it in the second year of the biennium as well. They would not be constrained by any rollover impediments. We know the RCTP program itself is going to decline in the next year. It's currently, the entirety of the program is currently just shy of $8 million. and it's going to decline to roughly $5 million next year. So this is an effort to try and ensure the recovery and the stability of our RDMOs. They're a critical part of the tourism infrastructure in Oregon, and we believe that this investment is worthy for that reason. We also want to put an additional $1 million into the grant program. We see a tremendous opportunity here. When we went out with our grant program last spring with roughly $800,000, we had over $3 million worth of requests for funds. When the Destination Ready applications were being sought back in January, we saw nearly $4 million worth of projects being submitted. So we want to put an additional $1 million into grants. The final item you see listed here is referred to as Destination Ready grants. What we have here are some programs that may not require as intensive attention, I guess I will call it, from our destination development team. They may be more ready for, a little more shovel ready, some may say, for the grant program, but they were identified through the Destination Ready application program. And those projects are being looked at collaboratively between the destination development team and our global strategic partnership team. And I believe that there's roughly $650,000 worth of additional projects that could be funded through that collaboration between those two departments, and want to make sure that we're able to put those dollars to work in that way in support of those programs as expeditiously as possible this spring as well. Next slide, please. I do want to show you this slide. It provides the budget modification that I shared earlier using the state budget classification codes. This is not the format that we traditionally ask the commission to adopt the budget within, but it does use state budget classification codes, and we have been asked by the Legislative Fiscal Office to be sure and share the budget and budget modifications with the commission in this format as well. And so we wanted to provide that with you this morning also. Next slide, please. So what this means when you put it all together is the left-hand column on this slide shows the adopted June 2020 budget. This is the action that the commission took roughly 9 months ago as we looked out over the remainder of this biennium and specifically this 2021 fiscal year. The right-hand column is what we're proposing to you today. The increase in transient lodging tax revenue, the changes in other income, the increase in the transfer from the operating reserve and the other program fund balance. And then below you see the changes to program, specifically in the statutory grants, statutory RCTP program, and then the addition to grants, the development of a regional recovery and stability program, and the Destination Ready grant programs as well. And then the additional $200,000 in the destination development budget to carry out additional destination development or Destination Ready projects. So all in, all done, what we're looking for is a budget modification to increase the budget and allocate the dollars, as you see on this slide, from $56,410,000 as adopted in June to $61,033,425, which is what we're proposing to you today. And so with that, I would like to open it up for any questions that the commission may have around the any of the, I guess what we'll refer to as technical questions that you may have about information that was shared here. And then I will open it up for the public hearing and turn it back over to you, Chair Youngblood, for the two specific actions. One is concurrence on the revenue forecast for the next biennium, and the second being the adoption of the budget modification for this fiscal year as proposed. So with that, Chair Youngblood, I'll turn it over to you and we can entertain any questions that anyone may have.
Thank you, Todd. Commissioners, you may now pepper the CEO with questions. Don't go easy on him. You're going easy.
So this, pardon me, Richard Boyles, I'll just make a comment. I'm very pleased to see this recommendation come forward. I think that it represents a good way to use the organization's resources to help prepare for the return of travel. So, and you know, the funds are seemingly available to do it. So I'm supportive.
Thank you, Richard.
I would also second Richard's comments. I think this is a good use of the reserve funds and reserve policy that we put in place, and I'm in support of this budget modification. And I'll also say that I really appreciate the work that was done to figure out, to survey basically our stakeholders and see how best to deploy these funds. And I like that that was, you know, looks like it was done directly to impact those areas that our stakeholders felt would be most impactful.
Thanks, Nigel.
All righty. Yes, Greg.
I just want to say to have economic forecasts in June that got us conservatively close to real numbers is very helpful, and leads me to believe we can trust some of the forecasting, or most of the forecasting that's going on right now. And so I'm appreciative of that resource locally and statewide, and making our decisions as a commission. The destination projects that are set up, COVID ready is a big portion of that. But I was also reading about the wildfire, addressing some of the wildfire torn communities in the state as well. Is that part of that destination ready projects that we're going to be setting aside funds for?
Yes, it is, Commissioner Willett, and you'll hear more from the destination development team later in this meeting about some of those projects that are underway. But it was in response to COVID-19 and the wildfires and other economic conditions that exist in the state. So all of those factors were taken into account when considering applications. And similarly, I know our Global Strategic Partnership team is taking the same considerations as they look at how to develop guidelines for the competitive grant program, as well as for the One Country License Plate program that will be coming out later this spring as well. Yep.
Maria Ponzi, I just want to concur with the comments that have already been stated. Just I think this was a very thoughtful approach, and I think it looks like it makes good sense. Certainly, I'm interested to learn more about the grant items that are in there to learn more about how that money will be distributed. You know, as a small business owner, you know, that's going to be tricky because getting small businesses back in operation at this point is going to be tough. And obviously that is what I think of as the end result of getting, you know, people out and destinations. So I'll just be interested in hearing more about that and the COVID-friendly experience development, what that all entails. But again, thank you for putting this together and for the thoughtful approach to it. Makes sense.
Thank you, Maria.
Other questions or comments, commissioners? All righty. Well, Todd, thank you for the presentation. This has been really, really helpful, and the commentary and conversation, as always, has been very good. Commissioners, I will now open the public hearing for the proposed budget modification. After reviewing guidance from consultants regarding the 21-23 revenue forecast and receiving the February transient lodging tax deposit from the Department of Revenue, the proposed budget modification was posted to the commission meeting page on February 19th, and additional notice was sent to the industry e-news that same day. For the record, no testimony on the proposed budget modification was submitted. And so unless there is additional testimony for the record received by Travel Oregon that has not been provided and reviewed by the commission, I will now close the public hearing without objection. Well, because you can't. Okay, good. So now we have two pieces of business to take into consideration. Concurrence of the revenue forecast modification, as Todd described, and subsequently the next fiscal budget. So on your screen, oh, thank you very much, Sarah. On your screen, you can see that we have a proposal for modification of the current forecast. And I will actually need a motion to approve the modification of this forecast before we move on to the next biennial budget.
Motion to approve forecast.
Second.
Thank you. Todd, any commentary or clarity on that before we vote?
No, as we explained, we believe the numbers, the baseline numbers forecasted by Tourism Economics are reasonable. Both LaDan and Kathleen have looked at those internally and confirmed that as well. And so your staff team feel very comfortable in proposing those as revenue forecasts for us to use in our planning purposes for this spring, and we'll bring finals forward when we meet in June.
Thank you for the added clarity. And so with the motion, all in favor, please say aye.
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 And any opposition? Perfect. Then the motion relative to the revenue forecast is adopted. And so now, as shown on screen, or about to be, the Travel Oregon team has received the fiscal year 21 revenues through February and has analyzed and provided the revision to the 2021 revenue, which we just discussed. And that brings us to our biennial budget modification. So given these numbers and the report we received today, the budget modification we are seeking action on is modifying the budget from $56,410,000 up to $61,033,425 to be allocated as Todd described today and as depicted in the proposed budget modification slide shown here. Are there any questions or discussion before we begin a motion as it relates to this budget modification? All right, in that case, do I have a motion to adopt the proposed 2019-2021 budget modification as discussed and reviewed today?
So moved.
Thank you, and may I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you very much. All in favor, please say aye.
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 And any opposition? Okay, thank you. The motion to adopt the budget modification is passed. This one was a little bit tricky for me, and I appreciate all of your indulgence as we work through it. Show of hands, who would like a 5-minute break before we begin reports, updates, and discussions? Or would you, okay, thank you, Richard, for your bravery. And Mia, thank you for Richard's bravery. With that said, we are going to pause. I have 9:45 according to Mickey's big hand. We are going to pause the meeting until approximately 9:50 a.m., at which time we will resume and we will take up staff reports, updates, and discussion. It's been a good morning so far. Thanks for everybody. All right, commissioners, are we all getting ready to resume? All right, well, no rush, but the next section will be led by Todd as we begin on industry reports and updates and discussions. So, Mr. Davidson, whenever you're ready.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome back, everyone. As we transition into the reports and updates and discussion section, I just want to again acknowledge the number of industry partners that have tuned in either via Zoom or are joining us on our YouTube channel. I see these regular meetings of the Tourism Commission not only as an opportunity for us as the staff to report out to you as the commissioners, and that spirit of accountability and transparency to you on how we are performing and how we are investing the resources based upon the budgets and plans as adopted by the commission, as is the commission's statutory authority, but also as an opportunity to make sure we're informing our industry partners of that work as well. And I see presentations like Jeff Locker's from Tourism Economics as being beneficial not only to the commission and to the staff at Travel Oregon as we contemplate how we think this year is going to perform and how we think the next 2 years are going to perform, but obviously for our regional DMO partners, our local DMO partners, and business and industry across the state that are involved in Oregon's travel and tourism industry, to get an idea for what recovery may look like. And so that opportunity to bring that information forward in a very thoughtful and thorough manner is, I believe, a critically important part of these regular commission meetings. And I do so look forward to the day that we are all able to meet together again in person. And until then, we are doing the absolute best we can with the virtual world that we are currently living within. Our first update today comes from a very close partner and colleague to ours. As we look at the effects of the last year, and they've obviously been felt in every part of the state. But as Jeff Locker from Tourism Economics alluded to this morning, urban areas are getting hammered in a way that other parts of the state may not be experiencing the downturn impacts across the state. Absolutely. Businesses in every corner of Oregon are suffering as a result of COVID-19 and the wildfires. But it's especially noticeable in our urban areas, specifically for Oregon in Portland. And while no city or county or community has been untouched by the impacts of COVID-19 or the racial inequities and tensions in Oregon's devastating wildfires, the research is telling us, the personal connections are telling us that one of our regions has been hit really hard, and that's the Portland region. And it is now my pleasure to invite Jeff Miller to come before the commission and join us for an update from their perspective. I know this has been a question that has come up at the past 2 commission meetings. How is Portland doing? And I thought it best to invite Jeff to join us here today and provide him the opportunity to give you an update directly from himself. So Jeff, thank you so much for joining us here today. It's my pleasure to turn this portion of the meeting over to you.
Well, thanks, Todd, and thank you all for having me here today. And I want to thank Todd especially for his partnership over many years, but this last year in particular, it's been good to have someone that you can rely on and lean on. Todd, Teresa, Megan Conway, our Chief Strategy Officer, and I have a standing every other week meeting to share intelligence, talk about the future, and figure out sort of our paths together and how those meld. I want to give a big shout out, however, to the entire Travel Oregon team. The collaboration continues between our 2 organizations. And I will say right now, the most valuable is between Greg Newland and Kevin Wright plotting our marketing returns, because that's really where we shine. Because of the COVID-related budget cuts, we had to cancel our contract with Wyden and Kennedy. But thanks to Travel Oregon, we still have access to Wyden and Kennedy's media planners and buyers. And that means that Travel Portland and Travel Oregon's advertising buys will continue to be strategically aligned, which is incredibly important right now. In the collaborative conversations with Travel Oregon, we're paying particularly close attention to down funnel tactics like partnerships with the online travel agencies, and because we know it's all about heads and beds. We're also working to align our messages. Our research shows Portland's culinary offerings are a room night driver, and we know that the food cart scene is a particularly good and uniquely Portland experience. My charge to our team is that every action we take must lead to a room night in a hotel or a short-term rental. Those days create the revenue for the hotels, but also the taxes that fund our mutual work. We are pivoting again, and let me say that I hope to never use that word after this year. Our internal teams away from tasks that, while important, can be put on hold while we use that energy on higher value work that creates that room night. And with a team that's gone from 68 to 35 people, we have to execute on that mission every day. I'm going to share my screen and take you through what's been happening. You'll laugh, you'll cry. Share. Here we go. Okay, there we are. So these are the Dean Runyon numbers, and we started with 2011 because that was the year before the Tourism Improvement District fee went into effect. And you can see where our spending was, where the growth went to by 2019 earnings. But most importantly here, and I like to focus on this, are the number of jobs that were created. And our work, both at Travel Portland and throughout the state, Travel Oregon, is about creating those jobs and that economic impact. So I'm really pleased with where that is, and I'm not looking forward to seeing what the 2020 number is. And as you know, that we are working, our hotel communities come forward, and we're talking about increasing the Tourism Improvement District fee from 2 to 3%. So we'll see how that goes. Here's what's been happening in Portland hotels. It's pretty dramatic, and these are the rooms sold. You'll see through December, just the drop off is stunning. Average daily rate, again, has come down to a low of 91, which is almost unbelievable. It's a good time to stay in a hotel in Portland, unfortunately. And revenue, off of which the taxes that we obviously are funded have come down. But I will also say the city of Portland gets 5% of the lodging tax. So their number has dropped dramatically as well. And there's a true focus on the importance of tourism and what it means to the economy, to their budgets, to our budgets, and those jobs. You know, when we passed the Tourism Improvement District fee, we saw increases throughout the city. You can see from Jansen Beach, Eastside Airport, Central City, and the occupancy percents went up really dramatically, especially in Jansen Beach. You'll see that they started to taper down in 17 and 18, but that was because the number of hotels being built. And this is what happened this year. Talk about falling off a cliff. They truly fell off a cliff. Average daily rate, again, success throughout the city. It again has fallen, and Central City in particular has been particularly hard hit, as we all know. Number of jobs in Multnomah County, we had a high of 61,000 leisure and hospitality jobs, and we're now down around 28,200. So clearly we need help there. And here's a look at our budget at Travel Portland. You can see where our 19 actual was. If you go to the total revenues line, we were at 29 million. The actual 20 came in at 25. When we started putting our budget together, we thought we would go into this year with a $17,700,000 budget. By the time that we got to June and putting in our new accounting system, it was down to 10.4 million projection. And just recently, we see that we're now going to probably come in about 8.8 million. A couple of things to note, you'll see the TLT, TID combined went from 20 million down to 4 million. just unbelievable. Our contract with the convention center, Merck OCC, went from 4.3 million to 1.46 million, which really just pays for the sales staff alone. And thank goodness for the RCTP program. You'll see that's a $3 million number. Some of that does go out to our regional partners, so not all of that, but it's stunning that we would, without that, we would be in an even further world of hurt. At the bottom of that scenario one column, I will point out at the very bottom, the PPP loan that we got, which was for 1.4 million. And so we're putting that as a negative against the expenses. And we found 2.4 million in expense savings. Now, this is just a scenario. If we start coming back sooner, then we'll be able to spend some of that 2.4 million. And we are hoping to do that and to dip into our reserves, just as you are doing here today. A lot of scenario planning, and we would like to see at least some movement on the occupancy and revenue line from hotels. And that really has not started yet. We remain, revenue remains 80% down in January, and we think in February as well. You know, we do some perception survey work, trying to understand sort of how Portland is perceived. And this is over a long period of time, but you can see we're in the media a lot over this last year. And unfortunately, it all wasn't great news. You can see that's beginning to trend in the right direction. The general tone of the media, again, very negative in fourth quarter, 69%, but that's moving down, and positive media is moving up. Now, this survey has 1,250 people. It's part of a larger omnibus survey, but it does give us an idea of who how people are thinking of Portland. Based on what you've seen, would you be more or less likely to visit? Again, slow drop there on the negative and a nice increase in the positive. Portland is a potential vacation destination. Again, really nice to see the negative going down, the unappealing, and a little rise there. Safe, welcoming and safe destination. This was, we've always prided ourselves on being very welcoming. And so getting this moving in the right direction is good for us to see. And the most important slide here is, if you visited Portland, are you likely to visit again? And we see that has about where it was in the past. The negative has gone up a little bit, but we know that those that love us will continue to love us and will come back. And when we talked about why Portland is not a likely destination, you can see what each of these are and sort of what they mean. But again, at the end of the day, it's really, I'm not willing to travel during COVID. And that's the biggest thing that we're all dealing with until vaccines are in arms. We did do a hotelier survey with all of the Portland hotel GMs to ask, what work do you want us focusing on? And the number one thing was reputation management. We've taken a hit. We've had a lot happening downtown. A lot of the stories are overblown, as we know. We do have a cleanliness and homelessness safety problem downtown. So we're working with our partners at the city, with Metro and the county. The city's passed, or the Metro has passed a housing bond and a homelessness support bond. So those things should help us. And reputation management, Megan Conway on our team is charged with working on that project with our other partners. Some of the work that we're, as we begin to move out of this, some of the work is with an Airbnb marketing partnership, and you can see the neighborhoods that will be on that landing page. We know that they're an important partner of ours and would like to see that expand. You heard earlier in the presentation that the short-term rentals have not suffered as much as hotels have. So we think this is a path for us. It's a small investment, but we think an important one. This is the OTAs with Expedia and Priceline. We also in this have a $150,000 grant from the city of Portland to kick this off, and we will be out in market in April with sort of testing those waters and seeing what we can do there. And these are the hotel listings, and each of the hotels will then be able to buy up and have more share of voice if they choose to. And lastly, one of the creative things that the team did as we were, really pivoting to helping our local businesses was creating the food cart finder, and it's been wildly successful. And we know it's something that will be good for us for the long term. And it really does allow you to look at all of the food cart pods, where I think we have 400 in now in Portland, and be able to find what it is that you're looking for. With that, I'll thank you and unshare my screen.
Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate your candor and just, making time available to come and inform the commission of how things are currently going in Portland. We see the numbers, but you help make them even more real and more impactful for all of us. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Jeff while we have him here?
A quick question here. The consumer poll, is that in the Portland metro area or outside that area?
It's a national poll with a heavier West Coast weighting. And it is consumers of all sorts. They may or may not travel. It's really truly a perception survey.
Okay, thank you.
Jeff, great to have you here. Good to see you. You're looking healthy. It looks like it's been a really tough year, and I appreciate the steps that you've taken, and it shows. And looking at some of the prioritization and some of the issues that are ongoing, that's a good thing to be looking at. And the food cart sort of app is very interesting to me. The question I had for you, I know there's been challenges throughout 2020 and then starting 2021. And there's been some, looking at the STR reports, the room supply has gone down. Now, are you anticipating that the loss in rooms that we've been seeing is permanent, or do you think they'll be coming back? And how quickly can they come back, given that we're anticipating a fairly quick ramp up back into 22, 23?
We will see them come back. I think we probably have about 8 hotels still closed, the largest being the brand new Hyatt 600-room convention center hotel, which is especially hard for us. But we know they will come back. We're hearing daily that they're getting their boards down. We don't, that those decisions change every time something new happens. But what we are hearing is, with moving into the less extreme phase on COVID, the numbers are continuing to come down. We think that we'll see hotels opening much more quickly.
Sounds good. And then one follow-up question. Are you anticipating that most of the travel, when it comes back, will be sort of local travel, or are you anticipating more interstate or international travel? Is there a mix that you're looking at?
I think, all of the research tells us that leisure is going to come back first. It's going to be more regional in nature. Our Expedia program will be from Seattle down to Northern California. So we're really focusing on that local market. We believe the convention business probably will not come back this year, the citywide conventions, and that's a blow. Even with the vaccines, that's going to be a slow recovery. But we do see an increase in smaller meetings, single hotel meetings. So we're staying very, very focused on those as well, and especially regional meetings of that sort.
Thank you.
Jeff, this is Nigel Francisco, and I have a question just regarding your engagement of the restaurant industry. Obviously, a lot of the marketing messages over the past year have been very concentrated around the foodie scene in Portland. And at least from my knowledge, that's been fairly devastated over the past 8 months. And I wanted to hear a little bit about how you guys are working with engaging that community. Obviously, the food cart app does help, but some of those brick and mortar, I'm curious how that's going to be supported in this recovery.
One of the things that we're doing, and we have Kurt Huffman from Chef's Table on our board, is really waiting for the restaurants to be able to open back up. Culinary is a driver of room nights in Portland, but we need them to be opened up and to be able to serve people as part of that messaging. But we're going to focus first and foremost sort of on those OTAs and really what we have in creating those room nights. But culinary is always at the center of our message, And the restaurant scene remains important, and new restaurants are opening. In the past, we have done, say, a dining month, and we'll have to hold on that because we don't have the resources to do it. But culinary, again, will be part of our messaging, and luckily we've got good partners. The other thing I will say is that we have a really good city council right now, and they are very supportive of cleaning up the city, helping small businesses get open, restaurants get open. So I feel like there's a lot more momentum now that we have a new council in place and working really hard.
Great, thank you.
Jeff, it's Scott Youngblood. I sit over here in the cheap seats on the outskirts of Portland and Tigard. I was asked recently about our investment in Travel Portland because it's has historically been a membership model. And I explained during that conversation, as we go through all of the financial difficulty that accompanies being a hotel in the Portland metro region, that our commitment to our partnership with, our investment in, our belief in Travel Portland has never been more important, more critical, more urgent than it is right now. And then I suppose as a member of the commission, I would amplify that to say that as a statewide DMO, Travel Oregon has always had this remarkable crown jewel upon which to rely, not just for national and international air service, not just for arts and culture and dining and recreation attractions, but for really smart and spirited and collaborative marketing and a real deep and meaningful understanding that Oregon itineraries frequently start and end in Portland, and that symbiotic relationship between the two agencies needs to be meaningful and rich. And so I just, I guess to my colleagues on the commission, now is, in my mind, the time that we need to focus on returning to Travel Portland and to this devastated region some of the generosity and spirit and abundance that it has furnished for us for years and years and years. Jeff, you've had a hell of a job for the past year, and for one, I can't thank you enough for all that you've endured and for your continued leadership and support.
Well, thank you for your kind words. They really do mean a lot. It's been a hell of a year. The thing I would say is, I've always said is Portland is only as good as what it's surrounded by. And those Oregon itineraries are really what make Portland, Portland. And I will also tell you that, with these meetings that Todd, Teresa, Megan, and I have weekly, there is a clear commitment from them and from the entire team at Travel Oregon to help us get back on our feet, get moving forward. We've always been good partners and financial partners, and we will be again. It's going to take us a little while to get back, but we are ready. Trust me.
Good. Chair Youngblood, can I ask a question? So, Jeff, this is Kenji again. Just to follow up on both Chair Youngblood and Nigel, we appreciate you, and that's one of the most important things. We appreciate you and the team. So keep up the good work. But as a follow-up to Commissioner Francisco, the question that I had is, do you have statistics or numbers in terms of the number of permanent closures of restaurants in the region?
I don't have that number handy. I know people are working on it. I think the Multnomah County really has more information than we do. And I will say that I don't want to diminish the importance of restaurants, because that is in that number. And as we look at content on the website and sort of the story we tell, nobody came to Portland to stay in a hotel. They came to Portland to do the wonderful things that there are to do, from the parks to the food to all of the wonderful retailers, pals, et cetera. And so it's really retelling that story, and we're trying to get our hands around every day who's open, who has a new concept, who's doing something different than they did before. We're working with the Bureau of Transportation on supporting keeping those outdoor dining spots. So there's a lot of that back end work to make sure that when you hit Portland and land in Portland, you've got something really amazing to do, and you'll have that experience.
Thank you. And just remember, this is the darkest moment, and it'll only get brighter from here.
Thank you for that.
Well said, Kenji. Commissioners, any other questions for Jeff?
Thanks for having me.
Jeff, thanks so much for joining us today. Hang in there. Your partnership and friendship mean the world to all of us here at Travel Oregon, and we appreciate you. We're walking through this together. So thanks again for joining us this morning. Sobering. So, and indicative of the path ahead of us, and another reason I am so grateful to this commission for the action you just took on the budget modification that will help infuse additional resource into supporting the RDMO network across the state, because they are so vital and so valuable to the work we do. I often say, when you think about the work of Travel Oregon, you can't buy what we're selling when we're out there marketing. You can't buy what we're selling. We're in that demand generation business. The transactions occur at that private business level when you're booking a tasting at a winery, or making a reservation in a hotel or a restaurant, or booking your next trip with an outfitter guide, or buying tickets to a live entertainment show. And that's where the economic activity occurs, and that's where the jobs are being created. But a critical part of that funnel between the demand that Travel Oregon helps generate and the destination that we help steward through our destination development, destination ready, and grant programs, just to name a few examples, are the RDMOs. And to have Jeff here representing a region that has been so decimated by COVID-19 is invaluable. And we know every region has experienced some level of impact, of pain that has come as a result of COVID-19, of the social justice movement, of the wildfires. And so, again, it just reinforces for me my gratitude to you as commissioners for the action that you took in the budget modification here just a few moments ago. Speaking of the future, which is what I think we're all resolutely focused on, I certainly am. Every 2 years as an agency, we're required per statute to revise, to update, and to submit a biennial budget to the governor, to Business Oregon, to our state industry trade associations for their review and for their recommendations. And given everything that our industry has been through over this past year, we knew the opportunity to engage in this process of our strategic plan and budget development for the next biennium could not in any way be business as usual. For Travel Oregon, this process began by contracting with an industry strategic planning expert. We went through an RFP, a competitive RFP process that we opened late last fall. We assembled a review panel that was able to wade through all the proposals, interview finalists, and make a recommendation then to me on a firm to be hired. And after very thoughtful consideration and deliberation, that review committee recommended to me, and we have subsequently awarded a contract to the internationally renowned firm Destination Think. Chair Youngblood served as a member of this RFP review committee, and I'd like to ask him just to share some of his perspective about the process and on Destination Think in general before I invite representatives of Destination Think to join us and review the strategic planning process ahead. Chair Youngblood?
Thank you, Todd. It was quite a process. As Todd mentioned, I was honored to take part in the RFP panel that ultimately recommended Destination Think as our new partner in the strategic planning and organizational design process. And while the qualifications and abilities of our partner will soon be evident to each of you as we hear from Destination Think today, it was really the process that was most inspiring to me. The panel, this thoughtful and diverse panel of Travel Oregon professionals with whom I had the privilege of deliberating over the course of multiple day-long sessions, reminded me of the rare qualities of this organization that I don't know that any of us take for granted, but it's always inspiring to get those reminders. The deep passion, the fierce commitment to the vision and values of our agency that flowed through these sessions was remarkable. We as a commission are fortunate not only to serve a state as unique and relevant as Oregon, but also to get to support a team of professionals quite unlike any I've encountered anywhere else. I wish that each of you could have been there. We debated the merits and approach of a number of highly qualified partners. The diversity and makeup of the panel was reflective of your values and the values of the agency. And I was inspired that everyone used their voice really, really well in terms of going through this process. It was spirited and nothing short of what you would expect from a group that requires of themselves the highest standards of performance. And in this selection of Destination Think as our partner to carry us through this strategic planning process, you're going to find that we are really opening the agency up to a great deal of exploration, to opportunities to innovate in ways that, arguably the most innovative state DMO in the nation hasn't considered before. And we really have an opportunity ahead of us to do something magical, to build on the shoulders of campaigns that you've already been inspired by and have already earned national and international acclaim, to take us to another level. So, Todd, I don't mean to take too much time, and I would love for you to proceed with the introductions, but this really was a terrific process, and I really am excited for what the future holds.
Thank you, Scott. Really well said. As one who was there to observe the interviews and the deliberations of the review committee, you summed it up beautiful. Everybody brought their perspective, and they didn't hesitate from using their voice, and it made for a truly dynamic and impactful conversation, and at the end of the day, a tremendous recommendation and decision for us to move forward. As I noted earlier, this year's approach is not going to be our usual approach to our strategic planning process. And that's exactly as it should be. I mean, the fluidity and uncertainty of the global, national, and state economies require us to address the rebuilding of the industry and the economy first, and then to have that rebuild plan bridge to a more transformative 4-year strategic plan and budget. And to guide us on this trajectory, it's my pleasure now to welcome and introduce Rodney Payne, who's the founder and CEO of Destination Think, and Frank Cypers, who is heading up Travel Oregon strategic planning process on behalf of Destination Think. They're going to walk us through the timeline, explain to us the various phased-based approaches that they will be utilizing as we move forward to develop what will become our 2021-25 strategic plan. Rodney, Frank, thank you so much for joining us today. It's my pleasure to turn it over to you.
Thanks, Todd. It's delightful to be sitting here on the other end of the process that Scott just described. We've obviously been on the other end of processes like that a lot. That's kind of how our business operates. And I'd probably echo the diligence and thoroughness, and we can often get a sense for what it's going to be like to work together, even just through the RFP process. And it's part of the excitement that I have to be sitting here introducing our company and our team and the project as we currently see it. So I'm joined today by one of our most senior team members, Frank Kuipers. You'll hear a very strong and commanding Belgian accent to accompany my Australian accent. Frank's got a wealth of experience in destination planning, is very well versed in placemaking, which is an important element to destination planning because it encompasses everything that residents believe and really factors in all aspects of your tourism industry. And so Frank's really going to be guiding the process. So I wanted him to join me today and share with all of you the plan on how we're going to work together. And like Todd said, thinking about multiple phases is very wise for this project because it's hard to talk about anything other than economic recovery first, and then be very clever about how we want to think long-term about the role tourism plays for Oregon and all aspects of your community, and be very considered in that. And that's really what our business does. We have been in existence for 11 years now. We're a very unique style of company. We have been working like this for a lot longer than since before it was cool to be having Zoom calls, because we're a really global team and we do projects all over the world. We hold both creative expertise in-house, so we understand the reality of what you'll need to be doing as an outcome of this planning process, but very deep consulting expertise that crosses destination planning and organizational design. We only work with destinations, so most of our team has been in the shoes of Travel Oregon and knows what it's like to work within a tourism board at various levels, whether that be city or regional or national level. So we understand the ecosystem really well, and hopefully that experience will help to make a more robust outcome for you. We're very boutique. We're privately owned, which lets us, make decisions that put you first and put people first. It's something important to us. And one of the things that we really looked at when we first started considering responding to this RFP, because we see about 50 similar RFPs a month, and we have the capacity to respond to around about one of those every month. And we saw really closely aligned values in terms of what we believe and what we see you asking for in a partner. And often, for us, that's the thing that creates really good work and really good outcomes. So we're excited by that. And then there's a little bit of a personal connection too. Although you're speaking to an Australian who now lives just north of you up in Vancouver. One of my first travel experiences was to Oregon. I'm about to please half of the people on the call and tell you that I'm actually a duck. Went to law school in Eugene. And one of my very first jobs was teaching kiteboarding in Hood River for one of the local tourism operators there. So I have a really close connection to Oregon, and I've been lucky enough to explore a lot of the state, and that might have been one of the things that tipped us over the edge, really wanting to go after this partnership. So a quick look at a map. these dots represent where our people are, our offices, and sort of our experience. We're well versed in North America. We've got the team members in the US, and up here in the same time zone in Canada as well. So we're in a good place to be able to support you. And in terms of some of the recent projects that we've become known for, just to give you an idea of the type of work we're doing, we co-authored a strategic piece with wonderful Copenhagen that is probably one of the preeminent plans in our industry that really questions what direction that Copenhagen wants to take tourism. And when you speak of Portland as a gem within Oregon and one of the key gateways to the state, there's some similarities there in terms of very progressive thinking with Copenhagen and really including residents and multiple stakeholder groups in the long-term planning. So that was one of the projects that we've done recently. Another really focuses on regenerative tourism. New Zealand is incredibly progressive in the way they're thinking about recovering from COVID, facing many of the same challenges as you are, and thinking about how do we really include an equitable voice, thinking about their Maori culture and thinking about their environment. So some really good learning and that we can bring there. And we're also very proud of the work we do in terms of stakeholder management. We built the European Travel Commission's long-term strategy, and there's no stakeholder management harder than getting 30 very unique countries to collaborate around a long-term plan. So hopefully we can bring some really good thoughts and processes on how we can draw out of all of your various stakeholders where they see themselves in a long-term plan. I'll just quickly introduce you to the team that you'll be seeing on the project. So Shannon Landreth, based up here in Canada, will be your single point of contact, working with Stage on Todd's team to make sure that the process is on time, on budget, and according to plan. And she'll manage all day-to-day communications. And then Frank will really direct the project as the senior strategist on your account. And he brings a wealth of organizational design, which is going to be a really key piece of this project. And we'll need a number of people consulting with them. So William Backer, my business partner and our chief strategist, will be working really closely with Frank. I believe he spoke at your conference a couple of years ago, and so you had a very brief introduction to William and the thinking he brings to work like this. Sarah Prudhomme also works really closely with Frank, and she'll help to facilitate various things and contribute to ideation. And then they'll be supported by David and Mark. Both, everyone on the team here has been at our company for quite a number of years now and really well experienced. So these are some of the faces you'll see. And then they're obviously backed up by an operational machine. We have our own research team and a pretty good depth. We're around 30 people as an organization now doing work like this. So that's a very quick introduction to our company. And before I hand to Frank, I just want to say how excited I am to be able to work with Todd and the team and really hopefully show the international industry what's possible in terms of progressive thinking.
Okay, thank you, Rodney. Hi, everybody. Great to be here with you, although here is very relative and even virtual in these uncertain times for everybody on the globe, by the way, although the headlines in Europe these days are more optimistic. There shall be light at the end of the tunnel, as they say, and we will put human contact back in the core of everything we do. And I think that is, in a nutshell, the philosophy of our company, Destination Thing, that human contact thing. That's what we're famous for and even notorious for. We bring elements of placemaking to place marketing, and that's also for us a way to pick our clients who share that philosophy. Now, a strategy is not a document. A strategy is not a deliverable. A strategy is for us an organic, living, ongoing thing. And that's why we developed a process. And this is the process we have explained more thorough in the RFP. We don't have time, but just for your understanding, it's like 6 steps. The first step is really about framing the project in the right way, having meetings with clients and so on. The second one is really try to gather all information that is available. So for the moment, I'm reading like 20,000 documents you have produced over the last 10 years or so, having interviews with people. Where could we be is more the ideation step. It's like, how do you envision your future and where do we want to go? Then we're really going to distill that and pick 1 or 2 targets we really want to achieve. How do we get there is more like, what kind of actions do we need to achieve that? And are we getting there is absolutely about control, but also about measurement. That's how it looks like. What I'm going to do is try to just list up the deliverables. I think that's a long list and that's enough. What you need to know about your RFP, it's a 3-stage rocket, right? There are actually 3 things that you ask for. First, there is a 2-year strategy, and that's with a deadline that is very soon. Then there is a multi-year strategy, and I think it's the right time to do that now, because we need to think, how can we make the tourism industry in Oregon future-proof, right? How can you be ready for the future? But that has consequences also for the organization on a state level. Travel Oregon, how can we make them ready? So that's the organizational design piece. So let's first concentrate and focus on the first phase, which is really the rebuild plan. And that's what we have been starting already. And I think what is really important for you is that we have 2 workshops with the Travel Oregon team. It's also a first moment we can get to know better. And then there are 5 engagement sessions with the industry, which will be led by Travel Oregon, but I will be in the background. Providing with a framework, we know what we want to get out of it and so on. On top of that, like I said, we read everything. We're going to draft a plan. We're going to present a framework. There will be some going back and forth. But as you know, we're tied to a very strict deadline. So in April, this should be ready. Then it should be available for public consultation so that we can end this first phase in May. There is a caveat here. This is a rebuild plan, and there is a reason that we call it a rebuild plan. It's not a restart plan, because that would imply that you have been doing nothing, and that's absolutely not true. Even during COVID-19, so many organizations, the whole industry was really busy helping the community, showing sympathy with the community, giving information, and so on and so on. And it's also not recovery, because recovery should from in the start then suggest like we're going back to normal. And as you know, we're living in uncertain times. There will be some consequences. Your supply chain will be disrupted. The whole macroeconomic environment will be changed. So that's why we call it a rebuild plan. And it's a 2-year plan, but likely after 6 months, you need an update or an adjustment. We need to be flexible and volatile about this. The second one is really the big one, right? So what we did is we call this a transformational strategy, but remember there are 2 stages here. One is the organizational design piece. The other one is the multi-year transformational strategy. So as regard the organizational redesign, I have a background, I'm a professor, but I also have a background in BPR, business process reengineering. And most of you know that change is a very difficult thing. So many organizations always get stuck somewhere in change. And there is only one thing that really can help you to implement change over time in the right way, in a way that it's effective, and that is engagement, engagement, engagement. management. So what I'm going to do is first, I'm going to interview every member of Travel Oregon one-to-one, at least 1 hour. I'm going to, with the team, we're going to create a survey for the entire team of Travel Oregon. We will have some sessions when we hopefully can make it over there in fall together with the team. And there will be a complete destination assessment that's a deliverable, a sort of in-between deliverable. That's an analysis of how Travel Oregon is working right now. We can benchmark it. As Rodney you told you already, we work only with destination marketing organizations. I think we had like between 300 and 400 already. So we're quite capable to benchmark you and say from that assessment, this has been done fantastic, this is working very well, this should be improved, and so on. So that is for the internet, for the organizational redesign. As regards the industry, the first contact moment will be the Governor Conference. That's a fantastic opportunity. We will speak there and we will have sessions with the industry to gather as much input as possible in breakout sessions. The gravity center of what we're going to do with the industry is that the second half of September, we come to Oregon and we're going to have 10 co-creation labs all over the state, which are sessions that should be fun. We call it a strategy safari, and that's absolutely the biggest chunk of work when we speak about the industry. There are other things we need to consider. As you all know, Travel Oregon already started with a racial equity impact assessment. That will be integrated in the work we do, and we will be integrated in the work that Scott is doing with the organization. And the same holds, there is already a consultant, Cyrilda, who is working on the organizational culture, and that's the same. I'll work with Cyrilda and Cyrilda will work with me. So there will be sessions also when we are there, and the two other consultants will absolutely assist us, help us, we will assist them. So for the team in the industry, we're working as a whole, as one company, right? Alignment is very important. By December, you should have a final deliverable that really implies a transformational strategy and a lot of recommendations about internal and organizational design. And last but not least, there will be recommendations also for the implementation so that you can have a jump start and immediately in January, you can start rolling out the implementation of your transition plan, of your transformational plan. Okay, I'll leave it to this because I hope that there are questions.
Well, thank you, Rodney. And thank you, Frank. Commissioners, do you have questions at this time for either Frank or Rodney?
I have a quick question. It appeared you have an office in Alice Springs, and that might be the first office I've seen in Alice Springs.
I think that's a graphical representation of our Sydney office to show you that we have people in Australia. We have a few people scattered around Australia, so probably just picked one dot.
So not in the center of the Simpson Desert.
We don't, no, not yet.
Okay, that's a good place.
I have a quick question. What is going to be the involvement of the RDMOs in this process?
Is a question to me? Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I didn't see that outlined where the RDMOs are. They part of the interview process to gather the information?
Yeah, so there are three touch points with the industry. So we're gonna interview 10 people from the industry in Oregon. That's one. We will have sessions during the governor conference, and we will have 10 co-creation labs in Oregon. And then we will visit each region. So totally makes sense that we will meet everybody from every regional DMO. That's in the pipeline. That's what we planned.
Great, thank you.
And Don, just to add a little bit more of the specifics to what Frank just said, the engagement sessions that are occurring next month, during the month of March, that he referenced kind of being more in the back of the room, those are regional engagement sessions. Those are actually being co-led between Travel Oregon and our regional DMOs. So that's actually being done directly in concert with them.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you for the question. Any other questions? Not seeing any. Rodney, Frank, any closing thoughts?
No further closing thoughts other than you're in really good hands with Frank, and I look forward to spending more time with some of the people on this call as we begin to work through the process.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the Voodoo Donuts. I was in Portland like 4 years ago with my kids. It's an obligation, by the way, for young European kids. They want to all go to Portland. So I had to negotiate. I had to speak in California, but Portland was for sure part of the deal.
Frank, you'll come for the donuts and you'll leave with Oregon Pinot Noir, just so you know.
Sounds even better.
As unfortunate as that might sound, by the way.
Well,
Rodney, and your
Rodney,
kids will love the wine.
Yeah. Rodney and Frank, we're excited to be. It's hard to say beginning this work because I feel like ever since the decision was made, we have already been churning out the work. I know we've been on numerous calls and meetings together already. Thank you for giving a special shout out to Staj, who is our project manager on our strategic planning work. I also want to acknowledge Staj's tremendous work in developing the RFP, guiding the RFP review committee process, guiding the contracting process, and now, obviously, as we're commencing the actual development of the rebuild plan, and which will then bridge to this transformative plan that we've spoken to this morning. We're lucky to have Staj in the role that we do in project managing our strategic planning efforts overall. So Rodney, Frank, thank you again so much for joining us here today. We're excited to begin this work with you and appreciate you joining us here today and look forward to what's to come.
Thanks, Todd, and good for the chance to meet everybody today. Thank you all.
Great, thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
All right, commissioners, our next presentation is being brought to us by our public affairs team. I'm pleased to have Sarah Morrissey joining us to provide us with an update on the 2021 legislative session, which, as you know, has commenced, although has commenced virtually, and that's caused its own nuances and opportunities and challenges as we navigate the legislative process. And it's my pleasure at this time to ask Sarah Morrissey to join us and provide us with an update on the legislative session. Sarah?
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Thank you. So good morning, commissioners. For the record, my name is Sarah Morrissey. I'm Travel Oregon's Director of Public Affairs and Industry Communications. And this morning, I'm going to provide you with an overview of federal and state public affairs updates that have occurred since we last met in December. So starting at the federal level, We, at the federal level, the House is prepared to pass President Biden's $1.9 trillion COVID-19 relief and stimulus bill. The House of Representatives Budget Committee approved the bill yesterday. House Speaker Pelosi has stated that she's aiming for a vote to pass the bill by the end of this week. And the bill does include the following items that do support the travel industry. So $20 billion for a national vaccination program, $15 billion for a new grant program for small business owners, $35 billion for small business financing, $3 billion for the Economic Development Administration, most of that going out in grants, $350 billion for state and local governments, and $25 billion for a restaurant revitalization fund. While the bill was still in development in early February, Travel Oregon and Travel Portland worked with U.S. Travel to advocate to increase the amount of EDA funds available specifically for tourism, and to clarify that EDA funds could be used to fund travel promotion, marketing, and promote safe and healthy travel practices. While the effort was not successful, Congressman DeFazio did make strong commitments in support of including travel promotion in the EDA guidelines during markup. We're scheduling a meeting with his office in the near future to further discuss this topic. U.S. Travel has supported this package, especially due to the focus on increasing the distribution of vaccines, as they see this as the key to recovery for the travel industry. We also saw that this morning, the tourism economics presentation. Additionally, while the Paycheck Protection Program is set to expire in March, this bill does include support for small businesses through other avenues. We as Travel Oregon support these efforts and will continue to engage with the Oregon delegation to encourage the passage of this relief bill. Next, I want to quickly touch on the River Democracy Act of 2021. And this is really a bill that has been a process for Senators Wyden and Merkley. This is the result of 2 years of research, town halls, public meetings, and 15,000 nominations from Oregonians. And it includes approximately 4,700 miles of Oregon rivers and streams that are proposed to be added to the National Wild and Scenic River System. This would include sections of the Upper Deschutes, forks of the Clackamas and Illinois rivers, and the Grand Ronde, and more. As we learn more about this effort, we are committed to working with both senators' offices to share information about the bill with the industry. And finally, Destination Capitol Hill. This is the primary legislative advocacy effort for the tourism industry. The event is organized by U.S. Travel and provides an opportunity for tourism partners to advocate for tourism-related legislation at the federal level. This year, this event is fully virtual and no meetings will occur in person. Travel Oregon is going to compile Oregon-specific talking points once U.S. Travel has identified the primary policy objectives for DCH, and we are going to provide a brief to Oregon attendees at a pre-DCH coordination meeting held earlier that week. Sarah Watson will be connecting with you regarding participation. It'll be wonderful to have commissioners join us on this virtual platform on March 17th. And while I am personally disappointed that I won't have the opportunities to see Chair Youngblood ride a scooter at the National Mall, we will find a way to leave our Oregon imprint, even given the virtual format. So now I'm going to move over to state updates, where I'm going to focus on the current state legislative session. And typically I provide you with a handout that includes all of this information on bills, but as we are meeting virtually, I thought I'd make a slide. My apologies, I know it's very busy, but I don't know how else to share this information. So for session, the 82nd session of the Oregon legislature began on January 19th, but the floor session and committee hearings were delayed to January 21st due to safety concerns around potential demonstrations. The session is scheduled to end June 27th. And the session's focus is on crisis response and recovery. The main points are focused on assisting Oregonians to be able to help get through the pandemic and wildfire recovery and response, and addressing racial justice efforts. The legislative session is proving challenging, as Todd alluded to, as there is limited visibility and access to the Capitol due to the pandemic. Access is highly limited to the building, and public hearings and work sessions are all virtual. Coordinating public input along with committee discussion has proven challenging. Additionally, at this point, there are approximately 4,000 active bills, which is hard to manage, especially with a virtual setting. Travel Oregon is not actively pursuing any legislative concepts or bills in this legislative session. However, we are monitoring bills that relate to the state transient lodging tax and ones that have impact on the travel and tourism industry and partners. I'm going to quickly cover the priority 1 bills that are shown on this slide, and I'll discuss them as we go through from the top down. So House Bill 2500, This was Representative Marsh introduced this bill. It proposes to increase the state TLT to 1.8%. However, there's hesitation in pursuing it as the tax could be reinstated, but there is a chance that the funding would not be allocated to Travel Oregon or tourism related purposes. This bill would be preferable to pass during a short legislative session, as we discussed at the December commission meeting. Additionally, it is tied to a tax increase on a business sector that has been heavily impacted by the pandemic. Next, we have House Bill 2521. This requires TLT collectors to provide invoices that clearly set forth the sum of all transient lodging tax collected. This is another bill introduced by Representative Marsh. This legislation is driven to transparency around lodging bills. So she wants the receipts to explain the full cost of the bill instead of grouping costs together. The goal to be to increase transparency of tax collections versus fees, especially with intermediaries and booking platforms like Expedia. Orla is working with operators to understand the impact of this request on lodging and is monitoring this bill. House Bill 2579 increases the state TLT to 1.8% and transfers 0.3% of the revenue to counties in which the taxes were collected. That 0.3% has to be used for affordable housing. This bill is a carryover from Representative Kenny Geyer and has been reintroduced by Representative Pham and Senator Dembro. As stated earlier, the tourism industry has been heavily impacted by the pandemic, and there's little appetite to increase the statewide tax, especially if it's reallocated for purposes other than tourism-related recovery. We have also taken the opportunity to reach out to Representative Pham to connect and provide her with an overview of Travel Oregon's statewide programming and hear her concerns. The bill has not yet been scheduled for a public hearing or work session. We then have House Bill 2600. This proposes to allocate 0.25% of the state transient lodging tax to the Oregon Conservation and Recreation Fund. This fund sits within the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife and was originally created to provide a matching fund to leverage federal funding. However, the federal funding did not materialize, and Representative Helm is interested in potential other state funding sources. Recent projects funded by OCRF include trail development and habitat creation and conservation. Orla has met with Representative Helm and has expressed that they are not in support, as the lodging industry has been heavily impacted by the pandemic and needs a resource for recovery efforts. Furthermore, Travel Oregon recently signed a memorandum of understanding with state parks, Fish and Wildlife, DSL, the Department of Forestry, State Marine Board, and others to support the creation of the Oregon Outdoor Recreation Advisory Council. This would be the table at which discussions around outdoor recreation funding and priorities would be discussed. As such, this bill is preliminary and too early. The bill has not been scheduled for public hearing or work session. Then we have House Bill 2672. This establishes the Oregon Beach Fund and directs the state TLT that is collected from OPRD coastal campgrounds to OPRD for management of campground. Representative Brock Smith has introduced this bill previously, and Travel Oregon worked with the Oregon Coast Visitors Association to show that OCPA had already been doing substantial work in the outdoor recreation and public safety space. In the last year alone, OCPA has allocated approximately $300,000 to programs that include partnerships with the Curry County Sheriff's on Aquatic Safety, trail restoration with the Trail Keepers of Oregon, working to restore a section of the Oregon Coast Trail at Ecola State Park, and public safety work with the Tillamook County Fire Chiefs. The bill has not yet been scheduled for a public hearing or work session. And finally, Senate Bill 102, which exempts active retired or service veterans from paying TLT at military lodging used for temporary overnight human occupancy. This request came from Governor Brown for the Oregon Military Department. There was confusion around this bill originally, but it's clear now that it's only applied for properties on military bases and does not extend to private businesses. In general, the governor's office does not believe it is the right time to increase the state TLT or that to reallocate the funding away from Travel Oregon, as these dollars are critical to reinvest in the tourism industry for recovery purposes. We appreciate the support from the governor's office and agree with this position. Next, I'll provide an overview of Priority 2 bills, and these are bills that may impact partner projects and align with Travel Oregon's mission and programming. We have submitted letters of support for various of these concepts, which I'll go into in the next slide. For this slide, the majority of the bills are focused on either outdoor recreation or electric vehicles. For outdoor recreation, there are 3 bills currently active that remove the sunset of the Oregon Conservation and Recreation Fund that I mentioned in the slide earlier. They also propose to commit $1 million in general fund monies to the program. Other programs on this slide are around the electric vehicles and charging stations. One that looks at installing public electric vehicle stations at state parks, and another on creating a task force that's focused on charging stations. Travel Oregon's destination development team has been involved in both, supporting charging station installation at tourism-related facilities, and was a partner in the creation of Oregon's electric byway program. So we're excited to see these projects move forward. The next slide is going to cover a series of outdoor recreation, public safety, transportation, and film industry focus bills. We, as Travel Oregon, have written letters of support for some of these bills, which are identified by the asterisk. I'll quickly cover the ones we have submitted letters of support for. So first is House Bill 2564. This establishes the Willamette Falls Locks Authority as a public corporation. This will allow for the continued development of the Willamette Falls Locks as a regional outdoor recreation feature and expand access on the Willamette River. Then we have House Bill 2593. This permits the Office of Emergency Management to enter into an agreement with a nonprofit organization representing sheriffs under which the organization is authorized to administer a program to produce and sell outdoor recreation search and rescue cards. Short version is this creates a search and rescue card that you would purchase at a retailer. That funding could then be utilized to support search and rescue efforts, so either training or equipment for sheriffs and volunteer organizations. Then we have House Bill 3031. This requires incentivized film projects to have a written diversity, equity, and inclusion policy and make good faith efforts to hire according to that policy. This is the first step of a multi-step plan to develop a DEI component to the Oregon Production Investment Fund incentive program. And Travel Oregon is committed to supporting this bill as it aligns with the agency's DEI commitments. Finally, Senate Bill 43. This extends the sunset for film production tax credit to 2030. This bill would allow Oregon Film to book future projects with additional certainty. The current program expires January 1st, 2024, and Travel Oregon recognizes the economic development opportunities that Oregon Film provides to Oregon. Recent projects like Top Chef will help support economic recovery efforts, and as such, we support this bill. This legislative information is communicated to internal staff, RDMO partners, and the Commission via weekly updates and bill reports. We are hopeful that this increased communication helps provide transparency and timely updates to our industry partners about what is happening in the state's legislative session. Additionally, as we heard in the start of the meeting, Travel Oregon and the Commission continue to work in close partnership with the Governor's Office regarding non-essential travel and thresholds for when the agency will be able to promote travel to in-state, domestic, and international audiences. We also raise issues that we're hearing from industry partners. For example, we continue to state the need for an advisory council focused on events. Various partners and committees are already planning summer 2021 events and are asking for guidance. We're going to continue that conversation with the Governor's Office. And thank you for your time this morning. Please let me know if you have any questions regarding either federal or state public affairs updates.
Great report, Sarah. So much information put into a beautiful little 15-minute package. Thank you for that. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Sarah while we have her?
I'm sorry, I just had a question, Maria Ponzi. I noticed that we're submitting letters on some of these bills, but not all of them. Just kind of curious as to how that's decided. I'm really interested in this. I didn't get the bill number, but the one on charging stations across the state is, I think that's something we as Travel Oregon should be looking at to encourage travelers to travel zero emission across our beautiful green state. And also just curious about why we wouldn't support the encouragement. Again, it's, I think, $395 on bicycle pass or and foot pass. Just kind of curious how those decisions are made.
Sure, no problem. Thank you for the question, Commissioner Ponzi. For the process itself, really right now what happens is at the start of session when bills are first introduced, we put together a series of priority 1, priority 2 bills. Those are presented to the executive team, so Todd and the vice presidents of the agency, and we make kind of recommendations on what those priority 1 and 2 are. The ones that are priorities 2, I only spoke to those 4 because those are what we've already written letters for. The others are ones that we are very likely to write letters in support for. So if Senate Bill 395, which increases that expenditure on footpaths and bicycle trails to increase, to encourage that bicycle use, we would most likely support that. And that decision usually is kind of a check by me, and then I bring it to Todd, and there are sometimes opportunities that I bring it to that whole executive leadership team to get input, and then that's submitted. I would also say if there are bills that the commission is interested in supporting that are outside of this list, and I would make sure to communicate that to myself as well as Todd. And then we do track all of these bills in the weekly bill tracker that is sent both to staff, RDMOs, and the commissioners on their weekly emails. And so we're tracking all of those, but bills continue to be introduced. And typically kind of the screen is myself to make sure we are supportive of our partners. And then I'm on phone calls pretty frequently with both ODA, Orla are on a weekly basis, and then outdoor recreation partners as well. And then Oregon Film, it's dependent on the bill, but I would say this is kind of our priority right now. Those bills for the priority 2 are what we are supporting at this time. And that if there are additional bills that you'd like us to look at, please let us know.
Thank you.
Sarah, it's along the same lines of Maria's question, and it's about House Bill 3296. Obviously, that's one that would be impactful for the beverage industry. I know that as Travel Oregon, we're not directly involved in that, but this would impact a lot of sort of the ancillary community that we try to support. So again, I don't know, I don't expect the agency to throw support or behind this bill, but I also think that it would be important to track that just from a sort of overall perspective of what's happening in the industry. That's just my opinion.
Thank you. I'll make sure to add that in there. And then the only other note I'll say is when we do support, we also connect with the governor's office to make sure they're aware of our position and if they have any concerns. We've done that for the ones that we've supported before, but Commissioner Francisco will be sure to add that one to the tracker.
Commissioners, while you're all here and this is being recorded, I just want it to be made formally recognized that the crude cell phone footage that Sarah has of me recklessly driving an electric scooter on U.S. Capitol grounds was not filmed on January 6th, and I was not part of any civil unrest, regardless of what she tells the FBI. Nigel, you were there. You've got my back.
I'm afraid to ask if there's any other questions or comments for Sarah at this time. No. But Sarah, you set yourself up for that one. So Sarah, thanks for the report. Appreciate it. Great work. Great work. Commissioners, next up is a project we've touched on a little bit already this morning, and your specific actions are going to help fuel additional projects in regard to a program that I am incredibly excited about. I mean, the innovation, the responsiveness, the nimbleness that's been demonstrated by the Travel Oregon team, most notably in this case through our destination development team, is truly exemplary. And it's my pleasure now to turn this portion of the program over to our interim VP for destination development, Scott Bricker, who will introduce the members of his team that will be bringing forward the Destination Ready update. Scott?
Yeah, thank you, Todd. Chair Youngblood, members of the commission, thanks for having us. We're really excited to be presenting to you today. And I just wanted to take 1 minute to introduce 2 members, awesome members of the destination development team. It's been a push to get this program out. It's been an expedited effort, and all the members of the DDEV team have done an amazing job. So giving the presentation on behalf of the destination development team today will be Alexa Carey, our Director of Community-Based Services, and Hillary Sager, our Manager of Destination Development. With that, I will let you all take it away. Thank you.
Can you see our slides okay?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Let's go ahead and get started. So this Destination Ready program really aligns within Travel Oregon's overarching crisis recovery outcomes. So through the industry's recovery phase, the priority outcomes of new programming are really to make sure that we're ensuring the destinations, especially our outdoor areas, which have had such significant impacts from use or from wildfires, are stewarded. It's also vital that businesses, the backbone of our tourism economy, return to a thriving state and stay as contributors to the state's economy. And lastly, programming needs to be applied with a lens towards racial equity. This program falls under Strategy 8 of our Destination and COVID Recovery Plan set forward by our leadership. To summarize, programming supports the development and implementation of COVID-appropriate visitor experiences in destinations while still investing in areas that support their resiliency. Destination development is uniquely positioned to support this work at a local level because of our history of customizing community-based engagements while providing technical assistance and support, as well as making destination investments in new product with a destination management lens in mind. Through COVID, our team has furthered partnerships and programs that have expanded engagement and assistance virtually and across the state in a collaborative way. As a response, through our relationship as boots on the ground in communities for about the past 13 years, we heard directly from leaders at every corner of the state about the need for destination engagements and investments. The need was really aimed towards rebuilding from the impacts of these compounding crises and the economic conditions, including COVID-19, wildfire impacts, and more, all while preparing for what will likely be a very busy summer season. We shifted from the other virtual and flagship programs like the Oregon Tourism Studio to cultivate a new destination investment program that maximized our department's remaining budget. And this program would really leverage our budget and staff resources to see projects come to fruition that would be completed in the next 6 months to hit the outcomes that we highlighted earlier. And so Hillary's going to talk us through that program overview.
Thanks, Alexa. You can go to the next slide. So the Destination Ready program was really created to provide direct funding and technical assistance in support of the development, enhancement, stewardship of COVID-19 appropriate visitor experiences around the state. The investments we will share with you later in today's presentation provide between $10,000 and $50,000 in direct funding to support local and regional projects that will aid in Oregon's tourism industry's recovery and make destinations more resilient and welcoming to a diversity of explorers. Next slide. Through the Destination Ready program, communities can expect to see their local tourism assets enhanced to create safe, engaging, sustainable, and economically impactful experiences. Ultimately, this program will bolster community assets that both visitors and locals can enjoy in a COVID-19 environment, while also creating market-ready experiences that can be promoted with confidence when typical travel promotion and marketing resumes. So in order to ensure Travel Oregon's ability to support projects that had alignment with both our organizational outcomes and the community outcomes I just mentioned, that also aligned with the destination development team and our supporting contractors' areas of expertise, and that will make tangible on-the-ground impact on an expedited timeline, we created this list of eligible project categories to guide the community investments available through the program. So these include funding for our Oregon Food Trails program, as well as other culinary and farm trails across the state, projects that would support water recreation development and enhancement, funding to support our high use and critical outdoor recreation assets across the state, funding for projects that will help create bike-friendly destinations, small business marketing and technical support, as well as business district and Main Street improvements. Now I'll pass it off to Alexa to share the application and implementation process details.
Perfect. So let's take a look at how all of this rolled out. So through all the Travel Oregon channels, from industry newsletters to an informational webinar to the Oregon Tourism Studio base camps, we shared out the application for the greater part of about 3 weeks or so. As part of a parallel process, we were also seeking out contractors while focusing on outreach to contractors from diverse backgrounds. Awards were made in the middle of last week, and we'll be starting to host kickoff meetings and refining scopes within the next month and a half. Then destinations are basically off in starting implementation for the next 6 months upon signing the financial agreement. As a new program, we didn't really know what the applications, how many applications were going to come in. We knew that there was significant demand just because of all the different avenues of feedback from direct discussions, engagement with our RDMO partners, feedback in the stakeholder survey, but the response was significantly more than we imagined. As Todd had alluded to earlier, within about 3 weeks, we had just shy of $4 million in asks that came in. There were 135 applications from all 7 regions. Each region had more than 10 applications that had come in, though the majority were from like the Willamette River or Willamette Valley, Portland area, and the Oregon coast. Most were in outdoor rec or in Main Street, but there were applications across all the categories that Hillary just highlighted earlier. There's one thing that I wanted to emphasize though. There was not a match requirement to these projects. While we had asked destinations to submit shovel-ready projects that would create a maximal impact, there wasn't necessarily any ask to have a contribution of cash or in-kind in hand. And that said, even during a time when our industry partners have challenging funding streams, they really showed up. The partners on applications still wanted to demonstrate that they were invested and bought in to leverage funds. So there was $4 million in cash in the table, way more than we expected, another $1.4 million in in-kind resources and applied capacity. And after some very intense deliberations, because the application quantity was so high and the quality was there as well, we made the decisions for the destination awards. And Hillary's going to take us through the first part of this.
Yeah, so now for the fun part, diving into the destination awards. So at this point, we have been able to award $600,000 to 23 projects spanning all 7 tourism regions, in support of all of the project categories we identified. So we saw outdoor recreation projects receiving the most funding, followed by Main Street and bike-friendly destinations. On this slide, you can see the regional distribution, and this is by number of projects, and then also the project funding by category. So that's dollars per project category. So if we go to the next slide, we can start diving into some of the specifics around the projects we have awarded. So in the category of outdoor recreation, we have the opportunity to make investments in landmark projects across the state, including investments in signature trails like the iconic Salmonberry Trail, as well as the developing Blue Mountains Trail that will offer a 556-mile through hiking experience through Northeast Oregon, extending from Wallowa Lake State Park near Joseph all the way to John Day. We also have the opportunity to support 2 innovative transportation pilot projects in service of high-use outdoor recreation corridors, including a hop-on, hop-off trolley in the Columbia Gorge Waterfall Corridor and a sun-snow transportation pilot that will serve Mount Bachelor. Next slide. We know that 2020 saw record high levels of Oregonians and visitors recreating in the outdoors, with high-use areas sustaining significant impacts, as well as the effects of higher visitation on lesser-known parks and public lands that lack the resources to keep up. The catastrophic fire season of 2020 layered on even more complex management challenges. Destination-ready funding has been allocated to help impacted recreation areas rebuild and prepare for a more resilient 2021 season and beyond, including land stewardship and maintenance efforts to prepare Eastern Oregon's most visited public lands for the coming seasons. That includes the Wallowa-Whitman National Forest, the Owyhee region, the Steens Mountain Wilderness, and the Alvord Desert. We'll also be supporting trailhead signage projects in Central Oregon, integration of the Take Care Out There responsible recreation messaging pillars into materials used by trailhead ambassadors in the gorge, infrastructure improvements to Spring Creek access points in Collier State Park, and innovative voluntourism travel packages that will both support local lodging properties and facilitate trail recovery efforts in the wildfire impacted McKenzie River corridor. And then moving on to the next category, which is food and farm trails.
For many years, Travel Oregon has invested in creating food and farm trail experiences in communities around the state that celebrate locally grown, caught, and crafted food and drink. The effects of COVID-19 have demonstrated the importance of these hyper-localized food economies for Oregonians, as well as how visitation to farms and ranches can offer respite for many travelers looking for safe, open-air activities and destinations. Through destination-ready investments, the 6 Eastern Oregon farm trails, the East Gorge Food Trail, and the Mid-Willamette Valley Food Trail will be able to update trail materials in preparation for the 2021 season. And then in the category of small business marketing, we know it is a hard time for tourism businesses, especially those with limited staff and resources. We also know that consumers are seeking reliable and accurate information from businesses via online channels now more than ever. In response, we have created an opportunity for a digital footprint audit and assistance project that will provide financial and technical support for efforts to train businesses in marketing fundamentals and provide hands-on support to improve accuracy and quality of business information available online. We will be working with the Rogue Valley Vintners and U.S. Farmstay Association to provide the service to their members. We will also be providing the support to businesses along the East Gorge Food Trail and the Mid-Willamette Valley Food Trail. And now I'll pass the mic back to Alexa to share with you the remaining awarded projects.
Perfect. So within the bike-friendly category, we'll be making 4 investments with a strong focus on the development of bike-friendly infrastructure like bike hubs. We're excited to see a lot of the best practices that we've developed around bike hubs utilized within these 6 communities in 4 investments. So for example, Coburg has been making a lot of significant strides in their visitor experience development in a wide breadth of areas: recreation, culinary and agritourism, and Main Street development. And as the southern anchor, this investment will further add to the quality of experience for cyclists on the official Willamette Valley Scenic Bikeway. Let's jump to water recreation. So we'll be making 2 investments in water rec. One of those investments will be with the Willamette Valley Visitors Association, and WAVA has been leading the Willamette River Recreation Studio process with a steering committee of about 25 representatives between Springfield to Milwaukee, and the collaboratively developed list that they created really highlights their priority needs. So this investment will go towards enhancements and infrastructure along the Willamette Water Trail, including safety kiosks, the River Guardian program, river sanitation support, investments in PFDs, and discovery paddles for BIPOC community groups. Going towards the Main Street category, 3 investments are going to be made within Main Street. Through COVID, downtown areas with retail, and especially restaurants, have been so significantly impacted, and businesses have had to pivot the way that they interface with visitors and with customers. So for instance, Albany has a gem of a historic downtown with contiguous retail and a thriving, expanding culinary scene. And outdoor seating and a lack of developed public outdoor spaces have been a challenge. So this investment is going to go towards maximizing that existing space to expand some of their underutilized areas and support outdoor dining for restaurants. Another investment will be in step with the Portland Bureau of Transportation. We'll be investing in their Healthy Business Plaza program. This will be supporting the development and implementation of temporary wayfinding and placemaking for 20 plazas, directing people towards outdoor dining areas in high visitation neighborhoods all around Portland. So to close, for next steps, we'll be coordinating a number of destination kickoff meetings to support implementation from March to the end of September. And at the same time, we'll be evaluating both projects and process to learn from communities while still assessing and improving the program at the same time. We're excited to support these destinations all across the state with creating and expanding COVID-appropriate visitor experiences that will significantly impact community livability and support recovery and resiliency of Oregon's tourism industry. We really appreciate and thank you for this opportunity to share this new program with you all today, and we're happy to take any questions with the remaining time.
Beautiful job, team. Thank you so much. Commissioners, any questions for Hillary or Alexa or Scott? Kenji.
Yeah, so Alexa, Hillary, Scott, absolutely wonderful presentation. So I have a couple comments. First, First off, I'm really stoked that there was so much demand for the funds. I mean, that was flat out. The difference was absolutely wonderful to see. And I'm sorry if you hear something in the background. When I said Alexa, my Amazon thing went off. So my apologies on that. The other thing too that I really enjoyed was there's a lot of forward-looking projects, and there was a lot of geographic diversity. So I want to express my appreciation for that. I wanted to point out two projects in particular that I really liked, and those were the Gorge and Central Oregon transportation projects, because it has been such an issue for the number of years that I've been on the commission, and I'm glad to see that work happening and some funding being put toward that beyond the work that we've already done. So that's absolutely fantastic. So I want to say thank you for all the hard work and also the forward-looking sort of visionary type of projects that you've selected. So thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Well said, Kenji. Thank you. Commissioners, other comments or questions?
Just super exciting. Thank you. I was hoping to learn more, and you guys, as usual, just nail it. You just like blew me away. So awesome work. Thank you.
All right, I think we're good. You know, I just again, I want to commend the team. As you know, with COVID-19, you've heard me speak before about the changes that were made at Travel Oregon as a result of, you know, seeing our budget go from roughly 40 million to now what's a revised $20 million budget. So we're roughly half the money we had last year. And so we've gone through a series of layoffs. This department in particular had 9 staff, now has 4, and yet still cranking out this kind of innovation, this kind of impactful work, and doing it very quickly, very nimbly, very responsibly and responsively. And I just couldn't be more proud or more pleased of the work that this team is doing, and the cross collaboration that is occurring with other departments to come in and support the work of the destination development team as we roll out this destination ready work. So well done, team. Very proud of you guys. Commissioners, our next and final report and update for this morning is going to be in regards to our global marketing efforts. And for this final presentation, it's my pleasure to invite Katie Clare, who's our Director of Global Marketing, and Allison Keeney, who is our Consumer Communications Manager, to provide us with an update on the future direction of our marketing campaigns, as well as reviewing some of the most recent regional PR events that we have undertaken to ensure that we are indeed keeping Oregon top of mind domestically. As has been noted a couple of times today, Travel Oregon hasn't quit messaging. We're still very aggressive in that place. And it's my pleasure now to turn this portion of the meeting over to Katie and to Allison.
Thanks, Todd. All right. Hi, everyone. Like Todd said, I'm Katie Clare. I'm Director of Marketing Services on our global marketing team. So this last spring into the beginning of fiscal year 2021, we took the steps as an agency to separate industry and consumer communications. This allowed the industry communications team to align directly with the CEO's office and public affairs, with consumer communications aligning directly with the marketing team's overarching goal to drive statewide economic impact through compelling consumer outreach. Consumer communications, or PR, was brought onto the marketing services team to allow the department to have a general focus led and composed of communications manager Allison Keeney. Over the last 9 months, we've evaluated departmental direction and KPIs with 2 guiding elements. How do we drive excellent results with a focus on just consumer outreach? And how are we creating compelling consumer outreach when typical strategies like fam trips are unable to occur because of COVID? For the first half of this fiscal year, we've really focused around 2 activities. One was really quality regional coverage focused around safety, supporting local businesses, and Travel Oregon as that trusted resource. And the second was virtual national outreach to keep Oregon top of mind as a world-class destination. And to that end, if you have never had the pleasure of meeting Allison Keeney, I'd like to introduce her to you and let her take it from here.
Thanks for the introduction, Katie. I am very happy to be with you all here today. So to keep Oregon top of mind and engage with national media this fall and winter, we had to be innovative. To do this, we created 7 themed virtual events and paired those by sending a curated box filled with high-end Oregon-made goods to top-tier media across the United States. We worked very closely with regional partners and local businesses throughout the state to do this. The goal of this strategy was to keep Oregon interesting and relevant to top-tier media during the pandemic by sharing unique, untold stories of the people, places, and products of each region. In total, more than 70 national media attended the virtual events and received a mailer box of Oregon goodies. Every media who attended the events have been invited to come to Oregon on a future press trip when it is safe to do so. Now I'll walk you through each of those regional events. We kicked off this series of virtual events in late fall in Eastern Oregon and created a mini Pendleton Roundup, complete with live animals, past and present rodeo contestants, and a Native American oral history and dance ceremony. We worked very closely with Travel Pendleton, the Pendleton Roundup, and the Confederate Tribes of Umatilla Indian Reservation to make sure we were following all proper protocols and ethical guidelines. We received really great feedback from our regional partners and many of the media who joined for that first event. Next was the Willamette Valley, where we collaborated closely with the Willamette Valley Visitors Association. For this event, we wanted to highlight the newer rising stars of the valley. Many of the wines and cheeses we selected were smaller batch and BIPOC producers. This event was hosted by Siobhan Ball, who was one of Wine Enthusiast's 40 Under 40 tastemakers in 2020 and owner of a local wine tour company, Dirty Radish. For this event, we received such quick RSVPs that we increased the number of media we invited. This was a strong indication to us that our event theme and mailer box were relevant and in demand to media. Next was the Mount Hood and Columbia River Gorge event that took place the Monday before Thanksgiving at Packer Orchard and Bakery in Hood River. Media were guided step by step from a local baker on how to bake an apple pie. We love the idea of national journalists having a slice of Oregon at their Thanksgiving table. During the event, there was a surprise guest appearance from local celebrity Sasquatch, who ended up stealing the pie at the very end. It was fun to see the media mixing and rolling out their ingredients throughout, and there was lots of questions and engagement because of the live baking aspect to it. The next region was Southern Oregon, where we created a Southern Oregon happy hour experience complete with live entertainment. Working closely with Travel Southern Oregon on this, the media were guided through tastings of wines, cheeses, charcuterie, chocolate, and honey while learning about the region. We could tell the media really enjoyed the live music aspect as they were bobbing their heads and smiling as it was happening, as was I. One of the media who attended this event said, quote, "Honestly, this is the best Zoom virtual travel call I've been on this whole year. You guys nailed it and all the partners were so generous." So we were very happy to receive feedback like that, of which we received many for each of the events. The next event in mid-January was Central Oregon and took place where media received a winter recreation happy hour kit. We worked closely with Visit Central Oregon and other local businesses to create a fun and engaging presentation highlighting activities you can do in the region during every season. We had 3 local breweries take the media on a guided tasting that paired well with the jerky and pastries that were also included in their box. The event took place at Black Butte Ranch. After the event, we received very positive feedback from media, including one who said, quote, "I've done several virtual experiences in the last year, and your whole tour, from packaging, coordination to Zoom presentations, was incredibly well executed. And I could really tell that each of the presenters really took time to create their segments." In early February, we headed to the Oregon coast, and we knew this one would be the most logistically complicated, as we were going to be shipping live Dungeness crab to media across the US. Yes, you heard me right. During a winter storm, I might add. The concept of this event was for the media to learn more about the lesser traveled Southern Oregon coast while cooking a recipe alongside one of Oregon's rising seafood chefs, Jacob Harth. In addition to the live cooking component, the media also learned about Washed Ashore and then were taken on a tour of their gallery in Bandon as they tasted their way through beers from Arch Rock Brewing. We received great feedback from the media who attended this event, and many are looking forward to coming to visit the Southern Oregon coast in the future. The final event took place just last week at Hawks View Winery in Tualatin Valley's newest AVA, the Laurelwood District. We worked closely with Travel Portland and the sub-regional DMOs to take media along a bird venture where they learned about the biodiversity found within the Portland region while sipping, snacking, and crafting along with bird-themed wines and treats. The Portland Audubon Society joined as one of the special guests as well. The live crafting component was a big hit with everyone, and we've had some great feedback and interest in story angles already. The Portland region wrapped up the 7 virtual events, and so now we're in full follow-up mode. So far, we've received coverage from CNN Travel, The Vegetarian Times, Luxury Travel Magazine, and Shondaland from media who attended the events, with coverage in the works from Food and Wine, Travel and Leisure, Wine Enthusiast, and the New York Times. We're also beginning to plan press trips for a handful of the media who attended the events. To get a taste of the virtual experiences for yourself, be sure to watch the recap video that was included in the report that you guys received. As you guys may remember from the last commission meeting, the global sales team is taking this idea to a global audience in their UK and Canadian markets this March. In the UK, Travel Oregon is hosting 2 virtual events for media and trade that will highlight numerous Oregon brands that can be found in the UK, like Pendleton Woolen Mills, Rogue Ales and Spirits, and Kettle Chips, to name a few. All attendees will receive a gift box filled with Oregon products. And during the virtual event, they'll learn more about what Oregon has to offer as a destination with interactive polls and quizzes throughout. For the Western Canadian media market, the team will be hosting a virtual treasure hunt that will lead to a final reveal during a live discussion from the Southern Oregon coast with Bandon Labyrinth sand artist Denny Dykes. The goal of these events is to maintain relationships with key media and trade in the UK and Canada while keeping Oregon top of mind for when international travel resumes. And now back to domestic PR. So what's next? February through March, we will continue media follow-ups from all the events and begin to plan press trips, which is fun. Proactive pitching efforts will be focused on Black History Month for the remaining of this month. We are targeting more BIPOC and niche journalists and outlets. We'll also be targeting travel safety messages, more informational how-to stories, which we found very helpful and media liked this last few months, and inspiring out-of-staters to dream and plan now and travel to Oregon later this summer and fall. In April and June, we anticipate press trips to begin happening again, and we will have COVID-19 protocols and a waiver for media to sign before arriving. Our first priority with press trips will be on top-tier media who have confirmed stories. Trips we have lined up so far, of course, these are all subject to change, are Backpackers Fall Gear Guide. They're interested in coming to the Wallowas to test their winter gear in April, which is very exciting. We also have Travel and Leisure, Travel Noir, and USA Today press trips in the works as well. Proactive efforts will continue to focus on supporting local and planning summer and fall trips in April and through June. And we'll also be supporting Travel Oregon campaigns, Welcome to Oregon Again, and Only Slightly Exaggerated 3.0. All right, that was a lot to get through in a short amount of time. So thanks for listening to these updates from the Consumer Communications team. Katie is going to continue to walk you through additional marketing updates now.
Great, thank you so much, Allison. So as we head into the spring, the marketing team has been working towards 2 creative campaigns to have them ready for market. Welcome to Oregon Again and Only Slightly Exaggerated. So like Kevin spoke to in December, we don't know the when, but we do know the what that Travel Oregon can provide to consumers in this space. And that is clear messaging that you should take a trip, that you should do so in Oregon, and that Travel Oregon is your trusted resource for information. We're still working in close communication with the governor's office, like many of the commissioners that met with the governor's office just a week or so ago, mentioned at the beginning. So we're working towards that timing. I'll continue to update what we're looking at from a marketing team. But what I do want to share today, sorry, I'm just pulling up my notes, is what we've been doing, what we'll kind of really focus on. So we recently taken a step back to look at our target, the active adventurer. We know, and we will continue to repeat, that when we're in market again, we'll be really strategic about the messaging who we're communicating with and that timing. And this is part of that. So just a reminder, when we do have our paid advertising campaigns, it's not just a blanket outreach to all adults living in our target markets. We really try to focus on and layer these activities. We work closely with our partner, White & Kennedy, to review this. And this is just an example of some of the things that we pull out, because our active adventure doesn't just focus on outdoor recreation or something like culinary focus with beer and wine tasting. We look at all those things together. So new updates that we just want to point out is that we have changed this target a little bit. Traditionally, we looked 25 to 54 living in Oregon, Washington, California, and Idaho. But we've actually brought that down a little bit younger to be 18 to 54. And that's just from data and research that we have that shows the presence that Gen Z is going to have in the market coming back strong into travel initially. And we want to make sure that we're reaching them in a compelling way. And then you'll also see some layers here that might seem a little funny to look at, but we're really bringing in things like community service that'll help us really bring in kind of a destination focus, a stewardship focus, and it's something that we can track as a priority for our consumer mindset. You also see something in here like antiquing, and what that allows us to do is to start targeting information that allows us to track towards things like priority towards visiting heritage destinations like museums. So with all that, we're looking at this, and then we're also bringing in and taking time to look at how we're reaching BIPOC audiences, because we know with media targeting that has to be intentional, and we're looking to make sure that we're paying attention in that space. So what we are doing right now is we're working on our objectives and strategies for both of these campaigns. Welcome to Oregon again, and Only Slightly Exaggerated 3. So each of these campaigns have a really specific job. And they're designed to do that with pretty well. And so what we're doing is this late spring into early summer, we're working to have Welcome to Oregon again as that invitation for Oregonians to celebrate local travel in market. And then for late summer into early fall, we're looking to have Only Slightly Exaggerated 3 in market, encouraging that broader audience to revisit the beauty of Oregon. And I think this is something that, based on our conversations with the governor's office, we feel pretty confident that we can have that inspirational market message in market late this summer. And what that allows us to do is when the natural trends of travel that we're seeing into information that May through August are having a lot of trip planning happening in that space. And we want to have that inspirational message in market in August, so that we can encourage people to continue taking those trips throughout the fall. So we're working towards what the media plans are going to be in that space. And then we're also looking at how another layer, which is our regional direct investment, that we're partnering with each of the 7 regional DMOs to have that in market as well. Like Jeff Miller said earlier, it's something that we've been able to partner with Travel Portland and some of the other regions to have a media plan and market that's a little bit closer to the booking window. And we're going to continue working in that space. So our next steps. This February, we're confirming our media objectives for Welcome to Oregon again and the regional direct spend. March, we'll be reviewing final media plans and beginning industry campaign planning. What this means is for Welcome to Oregon again, our industry campaign planning speaks to the industry outreach that we'll do for our media plans, creative assets, and opportunities to align and leverage Travel Oregon's paid media market. So ideally, if we are able to launch Welcome to Oregon again in April, the hope would be that the industry would be able to echo this with similar creative, or at a minimum know where Travel Oregon is going to be so that they can make smart marketing investments themselves. May, we're looking to launch a regional direct spend, like I spoke to earlier. So this is really going to be, we're working with the Travel Oregon marketing budget and team at White & Kennedy to make a smart investment that will be working directly with the regional partners that will have their creative and drive back to their sites. And then in June, we're finalizing the Only Slightly Exaggerated paid media plan. July, we'll have the creative finalized, and then we're working towards an August launch of that campaign. So with that, we had a lot of information to share, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Katie, this is Richard Boyles. I've got one for you. I noted the under next steps, the launch Welcome to Oregon again scheduled for April. And I'm curious to what degree you've had indications from the governor's office that they're likely to be supportive of that schedule, or is it more speculative than that?
Sure, that's a great question. The best that we can do is be prepared to launch as soon as we get an indication that it's appropriate to do so. And so that's what we're planning towards on our end, so that as soon as we have a conversation that allows us to have that media plan and market, we can do so. I think April is a little ambitious. I like to have the team plan towards that so that as soon as we get that, we can be pretty quick, because it's, and we're figuring that out exactly what's that light switch lag, right? But I think it'll probably be about 2 weeks for us if we have everything prepared for us to be able to have paid media and market. And so we just want to be ready to do that. Honestly, I think it will probably be more like May, but I think that's why you see that date.
Great, thanks for that clarification. And I'm glad to hear you're planning for April. We'll hope that actually comes to pass. You also mentioned, preparing for alignment with others, DMOs, local DMOs and RDMOs, presumably, as well as private industry, to be aligned in making smart marketing decisions. Do you see that as using some of the same materials or ideas, or what does that alignment really look like?
Yeah, so for each of our campaigns, we publish there's kind of a couple elements. We publish all of our paid media plans. And so our industry has access to that. And so we know that there isn't a lot of availability for marketing resources right now. So we want people to know, like, for instance, like what Jeff Miller mentioned earlier, we've been meeting consistently with Travel Portland. And so they're making media decisions based off of where they know we'll be. And we're making decisions based off of where we know that where they're buying. So that's like a big example, but at the minimum, we publish all of our plans. And then we also share consistently with the regional partners and then in industry newsletters. We also purchase all of our creative or license it so that all industry partners can use it within their channels as well. So we want people to know which resources are available. And then also we typically, if a partner has a need for an asset with photography or some cut down on what we do, then we also make sure that we publish on the industry e-news that's available for us to support them in that service, and we'll create that for them.
So thanks for recapping that. I am aware of all of the resources available from Travel Oregon for the locals. There's sometimes a timing question, though. I mean, Travel Oregon doesn't like to release, it's great work until it's really ready to do that on its own schedule. So in terms of, so that means that our DMOs and the local DMOs are necessarily a little bit behind in adopting those materials and getting them out. I don't suppose the approach will be any different this time, but we've got a fairly short period of time to motivate Oregonians to stay in Oregon and travel in Oregon. So I don't know that I have a suggestion there. It's really more of an observation and a hope that we can all be aligned once we get the green light to really be able to make an impact on people's travel decisions.
Sure, that's a great point. I mean, we have, again, in full transparency, it's also typically a delivery. We are usually working up against some pretty tight delivery windows of the creative, but with the Welcome to Oregon, again, we have all that creative. So that's a great point of just a reminder of how we can build in some more time, and we're happy to do that.
Thank you.
Sure.
Katie, one follow-up to Richard's question, and that's on just the sort of lineup of those campaigns. If the Welcome Back to Oregon does get pushed to a May timeframe, would that push the other one out further so they don't get too stacked up on top of each other? Or would that sort of keep the same timing that exists?
Sure. Because of long story short, no. We would have Welcome to Oregon again and in market for probably 4 to 8 weeks, just based off of media budgets that we'd have behind that. Maybe a little bit longer in social. And then for OSC, that would be in August, that it wouldn't be impacted. And we're designing those so that they can go live independently, meaning that they're being designed to leverage one another, but they're also not reliant on being really tight to be successful. And so we're working against a number of scenarios in that space, but I hear what you're saying. So I don't think so. There wouldn't be any impacts.
Great, thanks. One last question, and maybe this is just a quick one, but I noticed in your sort of activities that you guys are highlighting, there's been an additional or some addition to new activities, but then I saw that some were gone. I guess the one that stood out to me was golfing was not on there as sort of a focus area or industry. Sure. So just curious if that's sort of a switch that you guys are making, or if that was just overlooked or just not a focus for this campaign.
That wasn't all. That's not everything. That's not the whole list. And I think that's a good call out as far as taking a look at that. We're actually meeting again with Wyden & Kennedy this week to review the target in more detail as far as all of the entire evolution. I think right now we didn't have too many things that we removed. It was more of additions that helped us really define that target a little bit more. So it's pulling in some things that help us add in some more complex layers for that targeting. But we'll take a look at golfing. That's a good call out.
So Katie, Allison, this is Kenji. So first off, I want to say those virtual events were amazing. I actually took a look at some of the videos, and to all the commissioners, definitely take a look, because there's some very creative things that were done, and it was done very well. So highly recommend that. And then secondarily, I'm really looking forward to seeing the creative on OSC 3.0 and Welcome Back to Oregon. Because they're always great to look at. With OSC 3.0, the timing makes really good sense in terms of what you talked about and what you mentioned to Commissioner Boyles and Vice Chair Francisco, in terms of having them sort of independent, because I see that OSC having that seasonality component, and that Welcome Back to Oregon has that initial sort of come travel throughout Oregon for Oregonians, and that can happen anytime in that time frame. So that makes a lot of sense. But overall, I just want to say great presentation, and I'm really looking forward to sort of seeing the messaging as it comes along, and I'm hoping that our state progresses very quickly to be able to sort of accommodate this. So thank you for the presentation, and great job.
KJ, I got a little sneak peek that nobody else has seen at OSC 3, and you are going to love it.
Ooh, you're tempting me.
All right. Well, Allison, Katie, thank you so much. Kenji's right. It was a great presentation. It's exciting to see what we're doing. Some may wonder about the I guess what I will call if there's a lack of that traditional inspirational advertising on Travel Oregon's behalf, then what? And you're demonstrating that. I mean, the messaging has been out there. It's been robust. It's focused on recreating responsibly, safe travel, what the restrictions are, what's open, what's closed, so folks are aware of that, but also making sure Oregon's staying front of mind with the media. And Allison, those events are incredibly innovative and obviously very impactful. So great report. Thanks you guys so much for that. With that, Mr. Chairman, it is my pleasure to turn the meeting back over to you.
Thank you so much, Todd. Commissioners, any additional commentary, any announcements or new business you'd like to bring up? I saw your hand first, Kenji, so I'll go with Richard.
All right, good. I'm unmuted and prepared for your switcheroo there, Mr. Chair. First, what I think is a bit of good news, I see that 18 Oregon counties have moved one direction or another. 15 of those in the positive direction, 3 have moved to a higher category. So I think that's some good news to end on. In terms of an announcement, I didn't mention it at the outset, but we have opened our Element Hotel in Bend, Oregon, as of about 10 days ago. Something I'm very excited about, and anxious to make my first visit to the completed hotel, which I've not been able to do yet. Thanks for that.
Of course, and I apologize for not congratulating you at the top of the meeting. You're a brave man to be opening right now, and we're all grateful for your leadership. Kenji, sorry to put you off.
No, that's fine. So I do have a couple questions. Has there been any, I didn't see it in the minutes from the last meeting, but I was curious as to whether there's been any information concerning the Olympics in Tokyo, and then subsequently any potential impact on Oregon, what now is Oregon 2022. Just because it will have such a great impact in terms of tourism to our state. So I was wondering about that. And then second, whether there's any information in terms of when we might have a in-person meeting, because my last meeting, unfortunately, will be in June.
Two great questions, Kenji. First of all, regarding the question regarding the Olympics and Oregon 22, all indications at this point is that the Olympics in Tokyo are proceeding in 2021, and that Oregon 22 is still proceeding as planned for 2022. So no change there from the changes that were made in response to COVID-19. As far as the next in-person meeting, it's pretty gradual. We've made our next public meeting is from a business meeting standpoint, is scheduled to be in June. We do have a meeting scheduled in May to discuss the strategic plan. And we're anticipating that May meeting would still be virtual. The June meeting is to be held in conjunction with the Governor's Tourism Conference, and which has been delayed until June, and it was done in the hopes that it could possibly be in person. We believe the Governor's Conference is going to be virtual. Doesn't mean we might not be able to have a small gathering, in other words, have a live commission meeting. So there is a possibility, and we're looking at that, but I will not, I'm a big believer in managing expectations, especially yours, Kenji. And so I'm going to be really clear and say there is a chance that maybe the June meeting could be held in person, although the audience may be virtual for that meeting. So.
Thank you.
So you're saying there's a chance.
Saying there's a chance.
Commissioners, anyone else?
Yeah, Maria, again, just a quick update on our world over here. We're in Washington County and happy to finally be back open indoors in the tasting room. So that's exciting for all the little wineries on this side of the hill. Also wanted to announce that the Senate Bill 406, I think, may have passed, which would allow for an increase in direct shipments for wine, which has been limited to just 2 cases per month per customer. In Oregon, now has been increased to 5, which is just a huge win for the wine industry to, as that channel has been so important. It's kind of been our lifeline this last year. So some good news from our little industry. And I was curious about the Take Care Out There campaign, as we're probably continuing to see people going outdoors. Is that campaign still ongoing? And are we keeping our trails nice and clean and people safe? Can anybody report back on that?
I will just tell you briefly, and I'm happy to follow up, Maria. When I spoke earlier, in response to the question about the marketing and the messaging, the fact is that responsible recreation message, the take care out there, has been part and parcel to a lot of the messaging we put out since COVID hit. We knew people were wanting to get outdoors because it was an activity they could still pursue. We wanted to make sure they were doing it responsibly, and they understood those environmental stewardship messages, which are fundamental to the TCOT approach. So yes, that has continued to be part of our messaging throughout this process, and will continue to be part of that.
Just as a follow-up to Maria's question, with the layoffs at state parks and sort of the staffing issues, has state parks been able to keep up with upkeep of a lot of the smaller parks that aren't main attractions? Because I know, like, for example, Silver Falls State Parks they're still able to take care of a lot because it's seen such high use, and they want to maintain the quality. Do you know if any of the visitor experiences has sort of suffered at the smaller locations?
You know, Kenji, that's a fair question. I don't know specific to state parks, and can certainly find that out. Check in with Director Sumption and find out what the current status is. And I do know, and you saw it in the Destination Ready report, and also related to Maria's question, that there were a lot of trail efforts, both water trails and land trails, that were and part of it involved cleanup to make sure that these places were ready. So I will check in those specifically with Director Sumption and be able to get back to you with an answer on how they're faring.
Thank you.
You bet. Thank you, Kenji, for the question.
Thank you.
Thanks, Maria.
Commissioner Willits, you had a hand up. Maybe it was just a finger.
It was a whole hand. I wanted to thank you, Todd, and the group for bringing Jeff Miller in. I think Portland is a main landing spot in the state of Oregon, and to hear some positive projections on its recovery beyond making Scott feel better makes me feel better and the state feel better, and supporting them the best we can really makes a lot of sense. We need that back. I was driving through there during the recent snowstorm, and it was a tough situation, both climatically and visually. And I look forward to them recovering as well as the rest of the state. And then really proud of the work we're doing. It's nice to come into a meeting and hear positive reports and positive projections, and have hope again. I personally am not a very happy business person at this point, and I really could use that news, and I think it flows downhill to downstream to the rest of Oregon and rural communities and communities that are struggling. So thank you so much for all that your staff is doing to make this state great.
Thanks, Greg.
Beautifully put, Greg. Commissioners, anyone else? Todd, would you like to offer any closing thoughts, commentary, remarks?
Just very briefly, I want to pick up on the theme that Commissioner Willits was just touching on in what has been an incredibly challenging year for all the reasons that we've all noted. The meeting today, the agenda today, was so not looking in the rearview mirror. This was all about the future. You stop and think about how we're looking at whether it's short-term future, like we revised the budget for the next 4 months, and are putting an additional $4.5 to $4.6 million into the industry through the Regional Stability and Recovery Program, through an additional $1 million into the grants, into the Destination Ready program. And when you bundle that with the money that was already budgeted, like $1.3 million for competitive grants, $400,000 for the wine country license plate program, and what was initially $250,000 for the Destination Ready program that they expanded within their budget to 400, and then the commissioner just added 200. We will have nearly $6 million in direct investments going out in support of this industry over the next 4 months. That is not insignificant, my friends. That has taken some vision and leadership on behalf of this commission. You have authorized your staff team to be able to operate in a nimble and responsive manner. We have relationships with the industry where they're coming forward candidly with the needs and opportunities that they envision. And you saw that come forward in the stakeholder survey. And that's led to a tremendous amount of work that's going to transpire in making these investments and shepherding them through over the next few months. And then we've also looked at the biennial revenue forecast for the next 2 years. And while it doesn't get us back to the 2019 level, even with the tax going from 1.8% to 1.5%, not it, I guess I will refer to it as the adjusted 2019 level. It's certainly, the trajectory is right and it's proper, and we're going to be able to plan against that. And I'm excited for what we're going to bring back to you, not only in April and May as we look to the next biennium, but also the work we're going to do together on that more transformative plan that Destination Think alluded to. So I'm excited about the future. I'm excited about where we're headed. I am as optimistic as I have been in a long time. And maybe that's a function of the vaccine. Maybe that's a function of the reports that are telling us about consumer sentiment increasing, that COVID-19 is being less of a drag on the desire to travel, and consumer sentiment and optimism towards travel is growing. And when the time is right and people feel ready to travel again, we want to be there to welcome them back to Oregon. So I appreciate each and every one of you for your leadership on the commission and in giving us the direction and leadership and guidance that have helped us capitalize on these programs today. So with that, Chair Youngblood, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Todd. And commissioners, as Todd just said, thank you for your time, both today and every day, for the standard that you set for the rest of us as Oregonians, and for your service to our state. We also want to thank Jeff Locker from Tourism Economics, Jeff Miller, of course, from Travel Portland, for your presentations, our new partners, Rodney and Frank from Destination Think. And we're so grateful for today's inspiring Travel Oregon staff presentations from Sarah, Alexa, Hillary, Katie, and Allison. This really is a time for hope and optimism. Grateful to have shared this time with you today, and looking forward to our next gathering on May 11th. If there's nothing else from anyone, then this meeting of the Oregon Tourism Commission is adjourned. Have a great day, everyone.
Right. Thank you all, everybody.